On this holy day, no matter what good or evil we do, our merits or karma will increase by 10 million times. Although the actual day of the third of the 4 holy days should be 2 or 3 days later, which is Wednesday of this week, due to the deviation of our calendar the week before or after the day when this high energy state was produced in the past is still within the range. That is, in this period of time and space, there was once an event that amplified all energy many, many times, at least 10 million times. As the phenomenon occurred in the past, it will happen repeatedly. And according to the repetitiveness of parallel universes, after adding them together, it will accumulate to a very large energy enhancement. And this energy enhancement is not limited to the good things you do, which will be enhanced 10 million times. When you do something bad, or even if you just have a little greed, hatred, or ignorance in your mind, it will be increased by 10 million times, too. In other words, if you have some malicious thoughts, or some greed, hatred, ignorance, some anger, or some ignorant thoughts today, it will be increased by 10 million times and cause the infinite, you in the parallel universes to also increase these ignorant thoughts. This energy can increase all your greed, hatred, and ignorance. Then, your Dharma practice will regress. This is why many people say that they always stumble and fall on their Dharma practice path, sometimes making progress, and sometimes regressing, or even regressing more than they progress. This is the reason. Therefore, for this reason, we should avoid all the merits we have gained from practicing the Dharma diligently in our daily lives from being wasted in an instant, or from causing our minds to worsen and the merits of our Dharma practice to decline. In order to avoid these situations, we must be extremely careful about the sudden and massive increase in energy for no apparent reason. We will especially pay close attention to our actions of body, speech and mind during these days. Even if we cannot control ourselves and a bad thought suddenly arises in our mind, it does not matter. Repentance is also a cleansing force. Repent immediately. Repent as quickly as possible. Because the power of repentance will also increase by more than 10 million times. It can be used to eliminate the bad karma caused by our evil thoughts and the existence of that karma. So, this is why during these holy days, we must, in addition to observing our own actions, but also increase our awareness. Once any bad thoughts arise, immediately develop the awareness to eliminate them. Moreover, a large number of merits of good deeds will be accumulated there. Our future Dharma practice and the influence of parallel universes will be connected together to help our practice, so that we can only make progress and not regress. Therefore, we must pay attention to these important days and the powerful effects they generate. We must know how to use them and not treat them as a trouble. We often have to monitor our own behavior. Isn't it annoying? No. This is actually a kind of awareness that can help our Dharma practice. We will explain the Dharma before each Dharma event formally begins. Today we will give the 41st episode of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta series. Today's topic is how to judge whether a certain religion or sect has the ability to help sentient beings escape from reincarnation or suffering forever and obtain eternal happiness. In other words, there are many kinds of religions, and even within Buddhism, there are many sects. Every religion has many sects. Everyone claims that they can help sentient beings escape suffering and gain eternal happiness. Is what they say actually true? Even in our Buddhism, there are many sects and doctrines which claim to help you escape from the cycle of reincarnation, help you become a Buddha, and help you obtain eternal happiness and escape from suffering. Is what they say true? How can we tell? Are the practice methods they teach you in accordance with certain standards, genuine and without deviation? Or perhaps, they are deceiving themselves and telling you the wrong things. How can we judge? This is very important. As you know, once we step into the door of Dharma practice and enter a certain sect, we may have to study for at least several years, decades, or even a lifetime. We cannot wait until we are about to die to realize that what we have learned in the past few decades is useless and cannot achieve the results we desire. If we only realize it then, will it be too late? We will have to reincarnate and start all over again. Why does our Dharma practice take 3 greater Sankhya Kalpa and never succeed? It is because you do not know how to judge whether the teachings they are offering you now can really help you. To what extent can they help you? What have they helped you? It is because you do not know. You only hear others say that it is possible. They swear that it is indeed possible and feasible. So, you believe it, and spend your whole life like this. But the result you get may make you regret. If we already know what methods, or criteria, to use to judge whether they are feasible or not, then it will be different. In this way, we can get rid of certain mental shackles or cages in time and further enhance the awareness, which can really help ourselves, right? Today I am going to teach you these things. This session is very important. Let's see what the key points are. If we suddenly feel angry in our hearts, how do we explain the cause of anger in psychology? We must find the reason before we can help ourselves. Our hearts are filled with uncontrollable anger, and we do not know how to deal with it. What will be the consequences? What practical methods does Buddhism use to resolve and deal with these emotional changes? Does it have these methods? If so, what are they? How do they work? Are there any omissions or deviations in these methods of Dharma practice? If there is a deviation in the method of Dharma practice, what will be the consequences? The Hinayana practitioners are required to cultivate 7 kinds of consciousness, or awareness. And there are 7 kinds. In terms of method, degree and nature, how is this different from the awareness of the great perfection, the esoteric Buddhism, we want to cultivate? What is the real meaning of the existence of religion? Okay. Before explaining these, let's give a recap. If we practice the Mahayana, which is the exoteric teaching, or if the esoteric teaching is also part of the Mahayana tradition, what is the difference between their methods? If it is exoteric Buddhism, it says that the Dharma practice must go through the 5 paths and 10 stages. For detailed explanation, you can refer to the video entitled The Classification of Dharma Practice, The Essence of Emptiness, available from our Dudjom Buddhist Association, International's TV channel on YouTube. Generally speaking, when we start the Dharma practice, we need to cultivate 10 kinds of faith, called the 10 beliefs, to help us reach the level without doubts. If you succeed in your Dharma practice, you will no longer have any doubts about the methods you are learning or whether they have problems. But if one wants to succeed in Dharma practice, it will take an Asamkhya Kalpa, just to complete from the 10 beliefs to the 4 preliminary practices. How long is an Asankhya Kalpa? That is equal to 10 to the 51st power of the time the universe experiences formation, existence, destruction, and emptiness. If it requires an Asamkhya Kalpa, doesn't that mean it will take a very long time? As the time required for the formation, existence, destruction, and emptiness of each universe is different, the length of time may not be able to be accurately calculated, right? Well, assuming you can complete it, then you need to cultivate from the initial level of Bodhisattva to the 7th level of Bodhisattva, which will take another Asamkhya Kalpa. Then, it will take another Asamkhya Kalpa to cultivate from the 8th level to the 10th level. This has yet to become a Buddha. One still needs to go through the 10.5 level and the 11th level. Only then can one reach the 11th level to be called a Buddha. Why does it take so long? Doesn't your esoteric Buddhism claim to attain Buddhahood through the current body in the present lifetime? What is the method? Why is it so different from the exoteric teachings? It is due to a slight mistake leading to a huge mistake. The exoteric Mahayana teachings are practiced in the cause. That is, we are desperately planting good causes, doing good deeds, chanting Buddha's holy names a few times, etc., but we are not working hard on the result, or the awareness of our minds. So, there is a huge difference. What should we do? In fact, we need to transform our minds into the 5 kinds of wisdom. When we transform the mind into wisdom, and these 5 kinds of wisdom are developed, we can truly enhance our awareness. In other words, we need to cultivate our awareness to enhance such a thing. Only by improving our wisdom to the point where all 5 kinds of wisdom are complete can we have the opportunity to attain Buddhahood. Why? How can we eventually become a Buddha? When we can attain the perfect enlightenment, which means 100% of the awareness without deviation. This is called becoming a Buddha. What are the benefits of becoming a Buddha? You can be free from the cycle of reincarnation and suffering forever. And you can also obtain eternal happiness, truly no birth and no death, as described in the Heart Sutra. If you want to reach this position, you must have 100% of the awareness, without any deviation. In fact, the Dharma practice is about cultivating the awareness. That is, when you first start practicing the Dharma and cultivating the 10 beliefs, and if you do not connect it with the awareness, you will never succeed no matter how many asamkhya kalpa you spend. But, on the contrary, if you use the awareness to cultivate from the very beginning, the level without doubts, you will have the opportunity to become a Buddha through the current body in the present lifetime. The difference is so huge. What are the 10 beliefs? According to the names of sages and holies, the upper volume of the Sutra of the Garland of a Bodhisattva's primary karmas, first, you must have the mind of deep-seated confidence, sad, second, the mind of thoughtful awareness, third, the mind of diligence, 4, the mind of wisdom, 5, the mind of meditational concentration, 6, the mind of no return, avinavardhaniya. The 7th is the mind of dedicating merits. The 8th is the mind of protecting of the Dharma. The 9th is the mind of observing precepts, and the 10th is the mind of keeping vows. For details, please refer to episodes 30, 31, and 32 of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta series. In other words, from the very beginning of our Dharma practice, the level without doubts, we must connect with the awareness to practice, so that we can attain Buddhahood through the current body in the present lifetime. This is a cause in itself, and within the cause, you need to cultivate the awareness. Only when you connect awareness together will there be a result. If you cultivate the 10 beliefs without connecting to the awareness, then, no matter how you practice, you will not achieve any result. This is a cause and effect relationship. Well, how can we develop the awareness? How can we connect the 10 beliefs with the awareness for Dharma practice? You must know a set of practice methods to develop the awareness. We give it a name, called the method of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice. There are several major steps in it. Firstly, you must understand the mind cultivating procedure and integrate it into your daily life. Secondly, you need to understand the oral pith instruction of the Diamond Sutra, do not abide in any notion. Thirdly, you need to understand another oral pith instruction of the Diamond Sutra, one should not abide anywhere to arouse his mind. Fourthly, you need to utilize all of the first 3 to help you develop 5 wisdoms. After that, work with emptiness, neither existence nor voidness to enter the state of oneness, the state of perfect enlightenment to achieve Buddhahood. You need to cultivate the 10 beliefs, the 10 kinds of awareness, in conjunction with this set of methods. Only then will you have a chance to succeed in your Dharma practice, and only then can you succeed in this present lifetime. Okay, let's talk about it. Where were we at? In the previous session, I was talking about a disciple who wrote me an email. The second question in the email was this: due to the pandemic, my wife and I are at home every day. Ever since the 2 great masters led me onto the path of Buddhism, my temper has improved significantly. However, occasionally when faced with my wife's constant nagging and scolding, my emotions would rebound slightly. My mistake was due to my lack of deep belief in cause and effect, and I should not have gotten angry at my wife's complaints and scolding. The fact that we can become husband and wife in this life is the result of cause and effect. I shouldn't be annoyed by her nagging complaints and scoldings. I should keep a calm mind, think from the perspective of a wife, and be considerate, tolerant and supportive of her. Even walking away is better than getting into emotional arguments. I remember hearing the great master talk about the 4 dharmas of Sramanas in one of the YouTube videos. I must start with my wife and not retort when others scold me. What are the 4 dharmas of Sramanas? They are: first, if someone hits me, I do not fight back. This has been explained. You can refer to the 39th episode of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta series, entitled Methods and Differences in Eradicating Afflictions among Esoteric, Exoteric and Hinayana Buddhist Teachings, available from the Dudjom Buddhist Association, International's TV channel on YouTube. The second is that when others scold me, I do not retort. Please refer to the 40th episode of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta, applying Diamond Sutra's oral pith instructions, not to abide in the notion of negative emotions and create positive thinking, available from Dudjom Buddhist Association, International's TV channel on YouTube. The explanation has yet to be finished. The third is that when others hate me, I do not hate them. The fourth is that when others point out my faults, I do not point out their faults. In fact, I only used one session to explain, when others scold me, I do not retort. As we came across this big topic, I wanted to use this to do an analysis, so I have not finished it yet. Why? Why do I start teaching such a big topic in the section of, when others scold me, I do not retort? The reason is that, as you know, in our life, the chances of being beaten by others are of course much smaller. Except for being beaten by mothers or fighting with classmates when we were young, we are rarely beaten when we grow older, right? However, being scolded by others is something that has happened since birth. No matter how old we are, even when we are older, we still have the chance to be scolded by others. So, I chose this section to explain this. So, what have we taught? I have focused on explaining the first 4 minds among the 10 beliefs, that is, the 4 kinds of awareness. The first one is to explain that there are 3 in acceptance that you must complete. There are to have a deep belief in cause and effect, to have faith in the Guru, and that all sentient beings are Buddhas. You must comply with all the details to be considered as having met my initial requirements for you. Okay. You must know that when I teach you such a sophisticated practice method, a teaching that can help enhance your awareness and help you attain Buddhahood in this very life, I have to teach it slowly and carefully. Of course, it has to be taught step by step, not all at once, right? The preliminary framework of questioning has also been taught, and it is necessary to have a goal. What is the goal? Do you have greed, hatred, and ignorance? Have you ever done anything wrong because of greed, hatred, and ignorance? Ask these questions. Next, you have to analyze. You need to analyze based on the goals you set and the right time, place, and people. The third is a big topic. You need to analyze why greed, hatred, and ignorance arise based on the precepts and the Dharma you have observed. Do you know why greed, hatred, and ignorance arise? And the causes of greed, hatred, and ignorance. In fact, this is an extremely broad topic. Our teaching stopped here. The previous session lasted more than 2 hours, and I only explained the first point. What was it? When I am scolded, I get very emotional. What is the reason? It turns out that one of the reasons is being too sensitive and not knowing how to balance emotions. We have already given a whole lecture on this point alone. Well, are there any other reasons? Of course there are. What is the second reason? Why do you get so emotional when you are scolded? It is because your heart is filled with irrepressible anger, and you do not know how to deal with it. Buddha Shakyamuni once said that greed, hatred, and ignorance are habits accumulated by sentient beings over many lifetimes. It has become a habit. What is the origin of this? It is because your behavioral formula has errors which you have not corrected. So, it becomes worse and worse. One lifetime is enough time for you to make your behavioral formula worse, let alone many lifetimes. It will become a subconscious habit, which will be difficult to change. But now I want to become a Buddha in this lifetime. If it is difficult to change, it means that I will not succeed in my Dharma practice. It is said that it will take 3 Ashamkya Kalpa, a very long time, to gradually change. If this is the case, you may not be able to achieve it even after 3 Ashamkya Kalpa. So, how can you achieve it faster? We need to use a mind training method that can develop the awareness. We need to understand that anger is actually a manifestation of hatred. That is, we have anger only when we have hatred. If we do not seek the source of this hatred, and only chant mantras and the Buddha's holy names to pray for Buddha's blessings to instantly eliminate our hatred, is this possible? Of course not. If it were possible, Buddha Shakyamuni would have already done it. All Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can use their supernatural powers. Just tap the top of your head, or shine a light to bless you, and your hatred will be eliminated. This is impossible. If this was possible, wouldn't they have done it long ago? It can only be achieved by you untangling the knot in your heart. So, we have to find its source, right? If you do not find the source of this hatred, you will not be able to correct the mistakes in your behavioral formula, and you will continue to reincarnate. Even the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot help you. If any Buddha or Bodhisattva says that he can help you, wouldn't that be a violation of the law of cause and effect he himself speaks of? Where there is a cause, there will be a result. The cause is your mind that has not changed, and the result is that you will definitely be reincarnated, and even fall into the 3 lower realms, hells, hungry ghosts, and animals. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas cannot save you, either. At most, they can just be your cheerleaders, giving you some encouragement and teaching you some methods to help you quickly get rid of your hatred. Only then can you escape from hell. Otherwise, you cannot escape from hell. Let you repent quickly and let go of your hatred. They can only teach you this way. Since they will teach you this way when you go to hell, it would be better to teach you now so that you will not go to hell. Isn't that better? After you have fallen into hell, it will be very difficult to leave. It will be easier if you prevent yourself from falling into hell before you go there. So, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are constantly teaching you the Dharma, right? Do not indulge in the illusion that chanting mantras can generate a frequency to shatter the hatred and turn it back into the awareness. If you do not have a set of instructions of the mind cultivating procedure, and do not practice it in conjunction with the essential oral pith instructions of the Diamond Sutra, the vibration frequency will not work. You must have a position, a direction, and a goal, and add all the methods of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice that I have taught to enhance the awareness, so that you can work with the frequency of chanting the mantras to accomplish this. That is, the frequency of chanting the mantras is only auxiliary assistance. The main reason is whether you understand the method of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice. The main reason is whether you chant Buddha's holy names and mantras in accordance with this method. Then what has happened to chanting Buddha's holy names and mantras? They have become an auxiliary condition, not the main cause. If you focus on the auxiliary condition, to practice the Dharma all day long, but lack the main cause, you will still go to the 3 lower realms. This principle is actually very simple. In other words, the Dharma practice does not mean just chanting mantras, entering a meditational state and reciting Buddha's holy names. Is it impossible to enter a meditational state? Of course not. Non-Buddhists also know how to enter a meditational state. Do you think only Buddhists know how to do this? Why can non-Buddhists never become a Buddha? Because they have not talked about the awareness, and have not been elevated to the state of perfect enlightenment to be able to enter the state of oneness. They cannot explain what the situation is. They can only say that there is a very, very wonderful God, who created the world. This is all they can say. So, why do gods have such great powers to create the world? And can Buddhas also create the world? Of course they can. But can a God, who created the world, enter the state of oneness and become a Buddha? This is not the case. Their awareness can score from 1 to 100 points. A God may have great supernatural powers, but that does not mean that he has 100 points of their awareness, nor does it mean that he has no deviations. Therefore, even if he could create the universe, it is useless. He may not be able to enter the state of oneness. If he cannot enter the state of oneness, he cannot have eternal happiness. But why do they tell you that it is possible? They also say to give it to you. If he himself cannot do it, how can he give it to you? All that can enter the eternal happiness, that is, the happiness of the Dharma realm in the state of oneness, is a kind of eternal bliss. Only you can achieve it. Neither a God nor a Buddha can give it to you. A Buddha can teach you, but a God cannot teach you. The gods of many religions always say, "Believe in me. Believe in me and you will be saved." But they do not have a method to teach you, so it will definitely not work. What is that set of things they are talking about? Since they cannot do it, how can they give it to you? The only thing they say is, "Believe in me. Believe in me and you will be saved." This is just like everyone out there saying, "Just believe me. I'm very rich. Believe me. I have great power. Believe me. Anyone with a little bit of supernatural power can deceive you. You believe it all, but in fact, supernatural powers, great abilities, how rich and how powerful he is, has nothing to do with whether he has the awareness. There is a big difference. So, we must be careful. Okay. If our method of practice does not use the awareness to correct our behavioral formulas, and only relies on chanting mantras, entering into a meditational state, and chanting Buddha's holy names, it will not be possible to modify the behavioral formulas. Because, even if you enter a meditational state, it is only a kind of meditational concentration, which can be said to be an auxiliary condition. There is no difference from chanting mantras, or chanting Buddha's holy names. It is an auxiliary condition. You need a kind of meditational concentration, as an auxiliary condition, to help you do your mind cultivating procedure well and successfully. Do you understand? Well, how can we help ourselves build up from the basics and do better? Are there any explanations in our modern science or psychology? This is what psychologists think. Anger is actually the most primitive type in the human emotional system. However, in human social culture, anger is often suppressed. This leads to emotional problems. This is what psychologists say. Even if you use religion, say Buddhism, if you use repression to suppress your anger instead of using the mind cultivating procedure to channel and change it, to find the root and treat it, then if you rely solely on repression, your anger will always exist and will not be changed. Okay, let's see how psychologists explain this and you will understand. Psychologists say, what are the general causes of anger? First, you have some demands, wishes or needs, and because they are not met, you become angry. There is a theory called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was created by an American psychologist named Abraham Harold Maslow. The hierarchy of needs theory is a very famous theory of mental health. Why do we need to understand this theory? As you know, we interact with many people in daily life. No matter the things or the people, they are constantly flowing and happening throughout our daily lives. Therefore, psychologists come up with answers based on research and statistics of daily lives, everyone's mentality, state and situation. That is, they will help us lay a very important foundation in the method or process of cultivating the mind. We need these when we want to do analysis. In other words, what is the basis of our cultivation of mind and Dharma practice? We need to achieve mental health and balance. This is the first thing to do. You may say, Master, I really hope that my mind cultivation and Dharma practice can quickly score 100 points in this life, so that I can become a Buddha, or escape from the cycle of reincarnation when I die. Even if it's just a little bit off, I can definitely reach a Buddha's pure land. If you want to do this, please remember that the first foundation you need to do well is to make your mentality very healthy and balanced. This is something you must do. If you express it in Buddhist terms, it means that if your mentality is unhealthy and unbalanced, you will have a lot of greed, hatred, and ignorance. No matter how many mantras or Buddha's holy names you recite, or how long you can enter a meditational state, you will still be furious and extremely vicious in your daily life. If someone says something to you unintentionally, veins will bulge out in your body, you will sweat profusely, and you will raise your fist as if you want to hit that person. You are not really addressing the underlying issues at all. So, if you want to achieve the first foundation, you must learn these things, which even psychologists understand. When you are able to achieve mental health and balance, you will be able to observe the precepts. That is right, the Buddha has given you many precepts. Precepts are equal to the awareness. If you do not know how to develop the awareness, you will know what the awareness is by looking at the precepts. If you observe them, you will have the awareness. At least, you have some foundation first. But why do some people who have taken the precepts often violate them? No matter how minor or major, they will violate them frequently and continuously, 24 hours a day, and even in the dreams. So, what should you do? This is because your score in mental health and balance is not high enough, so you cannot keep the precepts. If your score is high enough, you can keep them. What are the benefits of keeping the precepts? In short, keeping the precepts is the second foundation you need to achieve. The benefit of observing them is that you will have the meditational concentration. You will have the meditational concentration. When someone scolds you to your face, even in a very vicious way, you will not easily become emotionally unbalanced. The mentality is still very healthy, with the state of balance to respond to the other party's scolding. You can do this, and this is called meditational concentration. That is, if you observe the precepts well, and your mentality is healthy, balanced, and scores high, your meditational concentration will improve. Improving the meditational concentration is the third foundation. Doing well in the third foundation, you will also know that the precepts are a kind of awareness. If you can maintain the awareness and improve your meditational concentration, needless to ask, your wisdom will definitely arise. That is, whether your wisdom can arise is your fourth foundation. These four things are the basic skills that determine whether you can successfully practice mind cultivating and the Dharma. You must work on these four things. Okay, let's see what this hierarchy of needs theory says. Why is it so important to us? Let's take a look. The first is physiological needs: sex, food, water, air, and shelter. This is called basic physiological needs. The second is safety needs, which include the need for personal security, stability in life, and freedom from pain, threats, or disease. The third is social, love or belonging needs, including the need for friendship, love, and affiliation. Why is it so important? It turns out that if we socialize well and this need is met, we can be motivated. If, on the other hand, you do not do well, your mental state will be affected, leading to lack of focus at work, high absenteeism, low productivity, job dissatisfaction, and low mood. You will lose interest in everything and may not be interested in all interpersonal relationships. The whole person will become as if you want to die. You may have the idea of severing ties with everyone. When you meet someone, you want to curse him. There is only one word: complain. Extremely depressed. This is because the need for love and belonging in social situations is not met. The fourth is the need to be respected, esteem. This includes a personal sense of achievement or self-worth, as well as recognition and respect from others. Be satisfied with your own value. If you can do it, you will be full of confidence. If you cannot meet these needs, you will feel depressed and feel that something is wrong all the time. The fifth is self-actualization needs. That is, if your goal is to achieve self-realization, or to realize your potential, and if you can meet these 5 requirements, I can tell you that your Dharma practice will succeed very quickly. In Buddhism, are there any practices that can satisfy or address these needs? All religions claim that they can meet these needs, but is this true? Let's talk about Buddhism first. What should we do? We need to analyze our anger. Does it come from some unmet needs? Okay, now the topic is, someone scolds me, I do not want to retort. But I have uncontrollable anger in my heart, and I want to scold the other person angrily. What should I do? Why do I want to retort? Why can I not suppress my anger? In other words, you must have some needs that are not met, so this phenomenon occurs. So, don't you need to analyze? You need to further analyze which need or needs that cannot be met at the same time, leading to this situation. You must analyze it. Thirdly, what is the degree of unsatisfaction? Is it 0? Are all the needs from 1 to 5 none? Is this the case? If so, do you know that this person will commit suicide soon? So, if a relative or friend has an accident, is depressed, and keeps talking about suicide, you have to study whether his score in each of these 5 needs has dropped to 0. If all 5 needs have dropped to 0, I can tell you that he will die soon. He will commit suicide soon. How can we save him then? Just look at these 5 needs and replenish as much as you can. If each of his needs does not drop to 0, he will not die so quickly. Do you understand? That is, this can delay a little time. As for whether there will be a turnaround after the delay, we will not know. Because it depends on his own karma. You need to know these, whether you are helping yourself or others. The more basic the need, the stronger the desire to have it satisfied. Let's take another look. In Buddhism, as you know, I am now explaining the Diamond Sutra and its oral pith instructions. It says, why do you have to reincarnate? It is because you are too attached and too clinging to these 5 needs and desires, and that is why things get bad. It says that you should be able to not abide in any notion while you are still alive. But that is not enough. You also need to develop the awareness by not abiding in notions. One should arouse the mind without abiding anywhere to be successful. It tells you not to abide in the notions of 6 dusts. The 6 dusts are 6 kinds of dust, namely form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dharma. Also, we should not abide in the 4 notions, namely the forms of self, people, sentient beings, and longevity. These have been explained in detail in the 8th episode of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta series, the oral pith instructions of the visualization practice for the emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, of the great perfection in the daily life. Furthermore, the Heart Sutra also states that you must do well not abiding in notions and developing the mind before you die. If you do this well and when you die, you will naturally be able to empty the 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates are 5 types of databases. If you clear these 5 databases, then the 18 realms, which are 18 chains, will not be able to lock you up. If you are able to not abide in notions, then congratulations. You will definitely be able to enter the state of oneness mentioned in the Heart Sutra. No old age and death, nor the end of old age and death, you will gain eternal life, eternal happiness, and be forever free from suffering. This is what the Heart Sutra tells you. Regarding the 5 aggregates, these 5 databases have been explained in the 7th episode of the Visualization Practice of Compassion and Bodhicitta series entitled The Visualization Practice on the Nature of the 5 Aggregates as Emptiness in Heart Sutra. That is, if you practice the Diamond Sutra during your lifetime, and when you die, you will be able to meet the requirements of the Heart Sutra, and you will be able to escape from the cycle of reincarnation. However, you must not abide in any notion. Once you become attached to anything, you will be reincarnated. Well, look at the 6 dusts. These 6 things involve emotions related to things. The 4 notions involve emotions related to sentient beings. These 5 types of databases involve the databases accumulated in the mind. In other words, our Dharma practice is to deal with these 3 types of things before we die. Otherwise, we will not be able to achieve the 5 aggregates being empty after death, and the 5 databases cannot be cleared. What does it mean to clear the 5 databases? It does not mean to erase everything. All the data is gone. And you become an idiot. It is not like that. The 5 aggregates being empty mentioned in the Heart Sutra means that in the 5 databases, there is nothing that will make you abide in notions. Nothing that will catch you and make you reincarnate, so you can enter the state of oneness. This is what it means. Do you understand? Remember, it does not mean that we should wipe the slate clean and become idiots together, not knowing an orange is an orange when we see one. It does not mean that you should clear the databases like this. It should not be explained like this. Rather, the databases appear to be empty. There is nothing that will make me cling to or abide in notions, so it is called the 5 aggregates being empty. Do you understand? Otherwise, you will definitely be reincarnated again after you die. In fact, this is the essence and focus of the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra. This is what you need to know. Okay, let's talk about what the 18 realms are. I think you have forgotten them again, right? Then let's talk about them. The form dust refers to matters or appearances, which are seen through our eyes and eye consciousness, consciousness being a function, that is, through the function of our eyes. This is called the first consciousness, or the first function. The sound dust means that sound is heard through our ears and the function of the ears. This is called the second consciousness, the second function. The fragrance dust is what we smell through our nose and the function of our nose. This is the third consciousness, the third function. The taste dust allows us to taste what it tastes like through our tongue and its function. This is the fourth function. The touch dust means that through our body and its functions, we can feel what such a thing looks like. This is called the fifth function. These are called the 5 most basic, first and fundamental functions our body has. Okay, what is the Dharma dust? The Dharma dust refers to the shapes and forms shown by the 5 dusts of color, sound, smell, taste, and touch, which are called the Dharma notions. For example, the scenery, whether the music is pleasant to listen to, whether the flowers are fragrant, whether the food is delicious, whether the texture of silk clothes is smooth enough, etc. The situations revealed by these 5 dusts are called the Dharma dusts. It turns out that after the 5 dusts create the Dharma dusts, they must pass through our mind, which is our brain, and then add the function of consciousness, which is the 6th function, before we can feel it. But how do we know whether what we get back is good or bad? When we see some scenery, we have to distinguish it. We need to use the 7th function, which is specifically for discrimination, called Manasvijna. It has a name. It will make a distinction. When I see this thing now, or receive information about this thing, is it good or bad? Should we put it in a good position, or a bad position in the database? Putting it in the database is called the 8th function. I have divided them into 2 categories. This stuff stinks terribly and that stuff smells good. Then I put them in the database. We use the 8th function to put them into the database. This database is called Alayavijnana and is a general database. Well, these 6 kinds of dust, plus these 6 organs and these 6 functions, play us around in circles. We are chasing after these things all day long. Oh, it smells good, it sounds nice, oh, I like it so much. So, I become attached, right? Think about it. 6 plus 6 plus 6 equals 18, which is called the 18 realms. You can give it a new name, and I will change its name to 18 chains. It is these 18 things, any one of which is enough to lock us up and make us reincarnate. If you want to remove these chains, you must use my cultivating the mind and Dharma practice methods. If you look at these 5 needs clearly, they are actually strong desires. What are they? Greed, hatred, and ignorance. How do these 18 chains lock us up? It is because within every need, there is some very subtle thing. If any one of the 18 chains touches this group of things and there is a chance that we abide in a notion, we will be locked up immediately. The reason is that we abide in the notions of the 6 dusts. These 6 kinds of dusts further lead us to abide in the 4 notions, so we have to reincarnate. In Buddhism, are there any methods of practice that can satisfy and deal with these needs and untie the 18 chains? In other words, the person who tied the bell must be the one to untie it. Okay, let's solve it now. Let's talk about the first, physiological needs. In fact, it is our basic physical need. From analysis to understanding, to what extent have we developed greed, hatred, and ignorance in order to satisfy our physical needs? Have we ever violated the precepts in order to obtain these satisfactions? Have we ever violated the precepts? How should we balance the anger and hatred that arise from not being able to obtain satisfaction? Let's look into it. Do you remember? I have already taught you in the previous session how to not to abide in the notions of negative emotions and to create positive thinking. If you want to create positive thinking, first look at how to deal with negative emotions. If you cannot handle negative emotions, how can you think positively, right? Let's first understand what negative emotions are. Firstly, if we constantly control and manage our anger in our daily lives, we may lose the ability to detect and meet our own needs. Why? I am just trying to control and manage my anger. I do not want to show a nasty face all the time and express my greed, hatred, and ignorance. Is there anything wrong with this? It turns out that if the way of control and management is not good, you will get into trouble. You will neither be able to detect nor satisfy your needs. That is, this root still exists, just waiting for the volcano to erupt. Well, as for our Dharma practice, most people only have a few methods of practice in fact. The first one is about sex, so I decide to become a monk. As for food, I would eat 1 hemp and 1 wheat. Do you know that Buddha Shakyamuni cultivated for many years, eating only 1 grain of hemp and 1 grain of wheat, but he was not successful after many years and almost starved to death. Later, he fainted in the Niranjana Nadi river due to hunger. A shepherdess then gave him rice milk porridge, which restored his health. He took a long time to heal, and it was not just a matter of drinking a bowl of porridge. According to historical records, he was treated for a period of time. When he recovered, his awareness was also recovered. Do you know that if you are too unwell, you will become short of the awareness? Thinking would become difficult. How can you think if your brain is already dull? If you do not provide energy to your brain, can you still think? Not to mention the awareness. After he recovered his brain functions, he finally realized that suppressing the need for food and eating only 1 grain of hemp and 1 grain of wheat, to practice this kind of suffering was called asceticism, and it was impossible to achieve success. You should use balance. You must have balance to succeed. So, he resumed eating. Later he succeeded, and very quickly. Okay. Water, air, you do not have to fight for it. Housing, in order to avoid living in a beautiful house, I can live in a cave or a small hut in the forest. Doesn't this solve my needs? However, this is an extreme or strong repression. If you adopt this approach, you will become increasingly depressed. That is, you will suppress yourself every day, right? Whenever a thought arises and you really want something, you will immediately say, "No, I'm bad. I've broken the precepts again. Oh, no. I must suppress it and never let it show." You will hide. Where will you hide? Into the subconscious mind. So, you will dream about wanting to get back to these things. For example, I really want to eat a buffet. It is so delicious. It will be like this. In other words, if you practice in an extreme or strong repressive way, it will become hidden and enter the subconscious. But the root will still exist. That is, you will continue to reincarnate for 3 greater Samkhya Kalpa. Why? That root still exists. You have not cleared the 5 aggregates at all. The databases of the 5 aggregates still exist, but are suppressed by you. This is not a thorough Dharma practice method. In fact, if you pay attention, you will find that there are many records in history. Some psychologists have also conducted psychological and emotional analysis on some Dharma practitioners, and have discovered this phenomenon. Some Dharma practitioners are overly depressed and cannot express themselves, which has entered to the subconscious. They do not know why they are depressed. It is impossible to know which need is absent, and which need cannot be met. You are not aware of it, nor do you have the ability to satisfy it. If you follow the example of Buddha Shakyamuni eating only 1 grain of hemp and 1 grain of wheat every day, who suddenly fainted at the Niranjana Nadi river and almost died, if he had not been so blessed to be rescued by a shepherdess who provided him with highly nutritious rice milk porridge, he would not have been able to slowly recover. According to historical records, it took several months to recover. If this was not the case, how could he restore his awareness? When you suppress it forcefully, and even if you want to know what kind of needs you lack, you cannot find out. You cannot think clearly because your brain is blocked, right? What will happen then? They are found to cry often. If you find that anyone, your family member or your friend, was normal before, but now cries frequently, it may be that he has a need for something that cannot be met. When someone cries frequently and ignores the symptoms, he will gradually become depressed. If depression is left untreated, it can lead to death, illness, and cancer. All kinds of disease can occur. So, in psychology, they say depression is actually a kind of anger. It is given a name called diffuse expression. It means that it does not erupt like a volcano, but unfolds slowly. This is called diffuse expression. It turns out that depression is anger. That is, depression is a type of anger among greed, hatred, and ignorance. Okay, these are called negative emotions. If you do not understand these negative emotions, how can you analyze them? How can you find the root, right? If you are unable to not abide in the notion of negative emotions, and instead use these practice methods to suppress them extremely and forcefully, this will only strengthen the negative emotions. If you strengthen your negative emotions, then when you die, your 5 aggregates, or 5 databases will have some more things, negative things. Then, wouldn't it be easy to fall into the 3 lower realms? The answer is yes. That is right. This is how you get in. Do you understand? Okay, this is one aspect of hatred. Instead of releasing it, you make it worse. Now let's talk about the 3 vehicles, Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. Mahayana is the exoteric teaching, right? They practice with different mentalities, as I have explained. Let's first look at the Hinayana. They adopt the methods of escape. In terms of sex, they become monks. However, there is one more thing: men are of higher levels than women. Women. They are the ones who make me have sexual fantasies. They are really bad and they are troubles. Therefore, it is right to belittle them and trample on them. We men are the highest. If we stay away from them, we will not have any troubles, right? The method they use is escape. Food and shelter are obtained by begging for alms, accepting offerings, and establishing a monastic system. When begging for alms, they eat whatever is given to them. If they are given meat, they eat meat. If they are given vegetarian food, they eat vegetarian food. So, they are allowed to eat meat. They would regard troubles as demons, so they would regard women as demons, and thus developed a set of practice methods. How do they practice? I cannot escape it. I see beautiful women everywhere all day long. What should I do? Or if I am a woman, I see handsome men everywhere all day long. What should I do? The method of practice is the white skeleton meditation. Well, whenever I see a beautiful woman, I will regard her as a pile of bones. The more I like a woman, the more I will imagine her to be a pile of bones. What ugly bones they are, and what a horrible look they are. She is skinny, with sunken eyeballs, and looks as ugly as could be. So, this can be stopped. This escape method is a form of Dharma practice. Okay, what about the exoteric Mahayana Buddhism? As for the exoteric Buddhism, their mentality is supposed to be should. Please note that should and can be done are 2 different things. They should transform afflictions into body, but in fact, the methods they use are no different from those of the Hinayana practitioners. With regards to sex, they become monks. Similarly, the status of a bhikkhu is higher than that of a bhikkhuni, and much higher than that of a lay Buddhist. To show that they are superior to others, they claim that women cannot become Buddhas and cannot go to the Western paradise of extreme bliss. A woman must die and become a man in order to go to the Western paradise of extreme bliss to become a Buddha. Being twisted into this way is a statement without any awareness at all. I have discussed this issue in 1 or 2 videos before. In terms of food and shelter, they do accept offerings and adopt the monastic system, but there is one more thing. When Buddhism was introduced to China from India, the monastic system was established, where people cultivated their own crops, were self-sufficient and practiced vegetarianism. They advocated being vegetarians, not meat eaters. This is how they cope with and deal with these needs. They also regard troubles as enemies and karmic creditors. Women. They are also my enemies and karmic creditors. Because they will get me into trouble. So, what are their methods of practice? Chanting the Buddha's holy names, praying, and repenting. In the past, the exoteric teachings had more methods of Dharma practice, including some of the practice methods of the Hinayana tradition. But later on, they peeled away everything like peeling flesh, bones and skin, leaving only the chanting of Buddha's holy names. I will explain this issue again in the future. So, the method of transforming afflictions into body is no longer available. In fact, they are using the Hinayana's escapist method to practice and deal with things. Well, think about it. The Hinayana approach is actually very unbalanced. Why is it extremely unbalanced? You see people as white bones, ghosts. You regard them as ghosts and demons. When you see them, you want to run away quickly. This is an unbalanced way of Dharma practice, so one cannot become a Buddha. There is no balance at all. Let's see. The exoteric teachings are also unbalanced, but not as badly. At least they regard troubles as enemies and karmic creditors rather than demons. So, it is not that bad. However, they adopt the same method. This is all imbalance, so it takes 3 greater Samkhya Kalpa to become a Buddha. Okay, let's look at the esoteric Buddhism which faces things directly. In terms of sex, whether you are a monk or a layperson, male or female, it does not affect your status as a guru. That is, the esoteric Buddhism regards women as wisdom dakinis. The dakini full of wisdom. What is a dakini? In the past, there were some female Dharma practitioners who had cultivated very well. They could walk in the air, so they were called dakini. But in fact, dakini is a general term for any female practitioner in any of the 6 realms. They are considered to be wise. This is used to describe female Dharma practitioners, calling them wisdom dakinis. They can be gurus without being belittled. Just because one is a bhikkhuni, her status is not lower than that of a bhikkhu. Although the bhikkhunis of the exoteric Buddhism have come out to teach Buddhism and teach people to practice the Dharma, when they meet bhikkhus, men are 1 level higher than them. Not just 1 level, but n levels, many levels, and bhikkhunis are much lower. If they refuse to obey the bhikkhus, it will be bad and troublesome. Although it has not yet reached the point where one has to kneel down 3 times and kowtow 9 times, there is still a huge difference in their status. But in esoteric Buddhism, everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. The level of one's status depends on the degree of one's Dharma practice. Even if you are a lay Buddhist, not a monk, and if your level of practice is high, your status will be recognized and you can still be a guru. You are not required to become a monk before becoming a guru. There is no such requirement. They receive offerings for food and shelter, have a monastic system, and some practice the Dharma in the mountains. The method of practice is to chant mantras, pray, repent, and visualize oneself as a deity. One can directly realize that he himself is the awareness of the Buddha, and can visualize himself as the deity to practice. When facing troubles, we need to train ourselves to develop the awareness and integrate ourselves into the problem itself. What does integrating into the problem itself mean? What should we do in terms of the problem itself, food, housing and sex? We need a balance. It is not to tilt to one side, like a scale tilting to one side. That is called imbalance. If it is balanced, it will integrate into the problem itself, using that awareness to flexibly solve the problem. It depends on each person's different situations and needs, and there is no distinction between high and low. In esoteric Buddhism, if you like to practice in a beautiful house, that is fine. You can also practice in the mountains or in a cave. You can eat meat or be a vegetarian. There is no distinction between men and women. Both men and women can be gurus, and anyone can be a guru regardless of whether they are monks or not. There are no boundaries based on status. So it is balanced. Among the most basic needs, it is necessary to work with the afflictions being body. That is, one does not regard women as troubles, nor does one regard women as demons. Do not regard sex as the devil, or regard sex as a trouble. Nor do we regard food, shelter, and all other basic physical needs as a trouble. Instead, we feel that these are things that can help us develop their awareness. But how can you achieve this? You have to use our mind cultivating and Dharma practice procedure to achieve it. It is not just saying, hey, I'm practicing the esoteric Buddhism now, so I will succeed. You are wrong. The esoteric Buddhism has many rituals and visualizes different deities. If your mind is not in line with the cultivation of the mind and Dharma practice that we are teaching now, you will not be able to achieve afflictions being body. You may even fall back into the traps that prevent the Hinayana, or exoteric Buddhist practitioners from achieving success. It is not surprising that you may be worse than them. In fact, the Hinayana tradition also has some very good basic methods, which I will talk about later. In other words, do not think that practicing esoteric Buddhism is the best. It depends on which kind of esoteric Buddhism you practice. Are you practicing the great perfection? What I am teaching you now, afflictions being body, is the mentality of the great perfection. Is this the kind of cultivation of the mind and Dharma practice that I am teaching you. If you do not cultivate this way, it will become a low-level Dharma practice. Maybe it is even worse than that of the Hinayana. So, we need to be clear. If you practice in the way I am teaching now, this is called balance. You can achieve Buddhahood quickly. Okay. The first kind of needs has been discussed. The second one is the need for security. Let's first talk about these two, life safety and life stability. Whether it is the Hinayana, Mahayana, or Vajrayana, the monastic system is established to solve this problem. Of course, a lay Buddhist is one who lives at home and supports himself. But if you are a monk, or in the esoteric Buddhism, if you do not become a monk, you can organize a monastic community of lay Buddhists, called the white-robed lay Buddhists. They all have a monastic system to solve the problem of life safety. The entire monastic community works together to protect everyone and ensure a stable life. We all work together to distribute the offerings we receive so that everyone does not have to worry about basic needs, and can practice the Dharma with a stable life. Therefore, in terms of life safety and stability, the methods of the Hinayana, Mahayana, and Vajrayana can handle it. These two aspects can be handled. Of course, as mentioned earlier, some of them are still not handled well and problems arise. When it comes to absence from pain, threats or diseases, how are these handled? Let's talk about the Hinayana first. This is a big topic. Escape, they use escape again. How do they face pain? They say, we should not be attached to pain and illness. As long as we are not attached to pain and illness, there will be no pain and illnesses. Just don't be attached to it even it hurts, okay? I'm hurting so badly now. Then observe your own body, the feelings, the mind, and even all the phenomena of the world. Feel them and understand that they are actually all impermanent and only arise and perish in an instant. It is supposed to be so painful. There is no I in it, because everything changes in a flash, and in an instant it is no longer you. There is no real me. No truly independent individual me that exists unchangingly. As long as you understand it, that is enough. You can get rid of the troubles of greed, hatred, and ignorance, and you can be free from suffering. That is, the Hinayana way of dealing with pain, illness, and threats is to not be attached to them. If you understand that they arise and diminish in an instant, you can get rid of them. And you will be free of greed, hatred, and ignorance. This is just a concept. What methods should be used to practice? Its practice methods are the 4 Satipatthanas, mindfulness, which are a kind of visualization. Do you know that this is a kind of visualization? Let me tell you, it is very powerful, much more powerful than the current exoteric teachings. There is no visualization in the exoteric Buddhism, but the Hinayana does have visualization, and it is quite detailed and powerful. Let me explain it later. Its first visualization is visualizing the body as impure. The first mindfulness is mindfulness of the body. You should visualize that your body is very dirty. You need to observe that your body is clinging to many unclean things. Both inside and outside of your body are filthy, and there is no clean place. You should observe that your body is very unclean. It is just a stinking skin. It does not matter if you discard it. This is its insight. Its view is to eliminate afflictions and attain body. Since the body causes you to have so much attachment, it is a kind of affliction. To eliminate afflictions means to cut off your body. If you cut it off with a knife, does it not mean that you can attain the awareness? Body is the awareness. This is how you can become a Buddha. It turns out that the Hinayana practitioners do not know that they cannot become Buddhas. It is because they do not have the Bodhicitta, the awareness of Bodhicitta. They only care about themselves and not others. It turns out that without Bodhicitta, without this kind of awareness, it is impossible to become a Buddha. They do not know this and think they can achieve body by eliminating afflictions. So, what is their Dharma practice like? This is how they practice the Dharma. Oh, that should work. Since the body is so bad, I will visualize it as being extremely bad, so that I can become disgusted with it. Then I can leave it, leave this world, and no longer be attached to this body. This leads them to have such a method of practice. This leads to an action, escape. I will escape from my body, which is dirty and filthy. One of the practices is called the visualization of disgust intentions. This is incredible. You need to visualize your body as divided into 31 components to overcome your attachment to the body. Let's see how it is practiced. You ought to visualize from the soles of your feet up to the top of your head. The entire body covered by your skin should be visualized as being filled with all kinds of impurities. Visualize every part as dirty as possible. Head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, muscles, tendons, bones, and marrow. You need to visualize each part very deeply. The kidneys, heart, liver, pleura, spleen, lungs, intestines, intestinal diaphragm, stomach contents, excrement, all these solid things. Visualize them as clearly as you want, and as dirty as possible. Okay, now it is the turn of fluids, bile, phlegm, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, ointment, saliva, snot, synovial fluid, and urine. Everything must be viewed as dirty, moldy, and full of bacteria. All of them must be visualized. There is another one, which is also very powerful, called the 9 tombs. What I say now are part of the method of visualizing the body as impure. Their visualization needs to be very detailed. You must visualize your heart as dirty as possible, and your kidneys as filthy as possible. In other words, if you visualize very well, it will be very difficult for you to avoid kidney cancer in the future. Do you remember? I have said that visualization means connection. If you keep focusing on your heart, liver, and kidneys, and visualize them as dirty as possible, and visualize them as rotten even if they are not rotten yet, then they will really rot in front of you. Do you know that the mind is a kind of energy? Let alone this is your own mind, so it will definitely happen soon. It is relatively more difficult for other people's minds to achieve this, but if it is your own mind that observes your own heart festering, it will definitely succeed. Then, it will be difficult for you to survive. Similarly, if you follow the 9 tombs practice method and keep on visualizing, it will be very difficult for you to avoid death. It says that after death, there are various physical decay phenomena, such as swelling, black and blue marks, bruises, pus, and ulceration. The leftovers eating appearance means that crows, jackals, wild dogs and the like will come and peck at your remains. Broken appearance, and blood-smeared appearance, refer to the appearances of being bloody and mangled. The tendons connecting the bones shake and are about to break. They are scattered and look like old bones. This is the appearance of bones that have been piled up for a long time. They turn powdery. That is, you should visualize how bad and corrupt you are. That is terrible. This is how the white skeleton meditation was developed. Now you often say, I'd like to contemplate the white bones, because I really want to marry someone, but I can't get married. However, I'm always thinking about her and can't let go. So, you come up with this white skeleton meditation. Isn't this practice very popular among you? Well, just remember what I am saying now. Any visualization is equivalent to connection, which makes it very easy to enter hell after death. Why? Isn't hell what you are visualizing now? The people in hell have bodies that are festering, filled with pus and blood, dirty and dark, and have turned into bacteria, etc. These are all the states of hell. If you continue to visualize like this, you will be connected to the unclean magnetic fields and go to hell. Well, I see, if you make connections as diligently as you do, it will be difficult for you not to go to hell when you die, right? The result is that it is very easy to connect to dark and unclean things. This is called unbalanced practice. Okay. The 809th of the Sayuktagama, which is the 29th volume of the Sayuktagama, mentions that after Buddha Shakyamuni taught this method and asked them to practice in this way, many people practiced it diligently. However, because of excessive diligence and it was an unbalanced practice, many practitioners had become disgusted with their own bodies and committed suicide. Not only suicide, but also murder. There were also cases of people going crazy and becoming truly insane. It is easy to go crazy if you are connected to an unclean magnetic field, do you know? There was a case in which more than 60 people died. Why did more than 60 people die? It turns out that some people said that they really hated their bodies and wanted to eliminate afflictions and attain body. If I don't have this body, kill it and cut it off, when I die, this body will no longer exist. Well, then I can get rid of all this filth. I walk around the streets every day, and I always feel dirty as I go along. I can't face these dirty things. Seeing such a filthy body, I can't even eat. I feel I'm really dirty. Better kill it. By breaking up this body, I can immediately attain body. As long as I stop breathing, I can immediately become a Buddha when I die. When one did not have the courage to commit suicide, he would instigate others to take a knife and kill him. Some people went crazy, shouting and cursing that they did not need to cultivate anymore. They said that it was impossible to cultivate with such a dirty body. If you do not have the courage to kill yourself, someone will come to help and kill your body with a knife. He helps and grants your wishes, so you should be grateful to him. So, they took knives and started to kill, from the riverside to the house, and killed a group of people. More than 60 people died. This is how the tragedy occurred. Why did this happen? It was because of the perception. It came from the perception. The perception was to eliminate afflictions and attain body, so this kind of practice appeared. It is to visualize how dirty you are and then enter the subconscious mind. You no longer know why you hate yourself so much. In short, you hate yourself very much. This is how this practice method appeared. What actions did this lead to? Murder and suicide. Well, what were the consequences? A tragedy occurred, with more than 60 people killed. That is, if there is a deviation in the perception, there will be deviations in practice, behavior and retribution. What I say today is actually to save some people. I hope they can break free from the cage of this thought, and not be trapped by these things anymore. That is why I say it. Later, I will explain why Buddha Shakyamuni taught these methods. It turns out that he had his own reasons. Nevertheless, the Hinayana practitioners use the escape method. In order to escape from the attachment to the body is removed and the feelings are cut off in a way of disgust. Since my body makes me have greed, hatred, and ignorance, I will cut them all off. That is how they think. This creates more pain for your body. If you do not have bodhicitta for yourself and kill yourself, how can you become a Buddha? How can you have bodhicitta for other sentient beings? Aren't you just killing other sentient beings? That is, the Hinayana mentality is completely wrong when it comes to our basic need, freedom from pain, threats, or diseases. Violation of needs. Psychologists also say that these are your basic needs and you should not suppress them. But you go against them and do the opposite. What will happen? You will lose the awareness. What kind of awareness? Not to commit suicide is a kind of awareness. If you do not even have this kind of awareness, it is called losing the awareness. In other words, you no longer have the ability to satisfy this need, and you no longer have the ability to be aware of this need. You have even lost the awareness, as said earlier. This will lose balance. That is, escape itself is the cause, and as a result, you cannot become a Buddha, because you do not have bodhicitta for yourself. And this is your result. The Mahayana uses transformation. What is transformation? Reciting Buddha's holy names in the hope of connecting with the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to seek help. In fact, the Mahayana used to have more practice methods. But because it was suppressed by the Pure Land school for a long time, other methods of practice have almost disappeared. Now there is only one left, which is to chant the Buddha's holy names to seek help. You must know that asking for help means that you are unwilling to face the fact that you are a Buddha. So, you have to use the indirect method of asking for help to ask Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to save you as you feel that you are not capable yourself. As a result, it will take 3 great Asamkhya Kalpa to have a chance to become a Buddha. Because it is indirect. That is, when it comes to avoiding pain, threats or diseases, it responds by seeking help, an indirect way. This is caused by the mentality of transforming afflictions into body. So it takes 3 great Asamkhya Kalpa to become a Buddha. Seeking help is the cause, and the result is that it will take 3 great Asamkhya Kalpa to become a Buddha, and this is your result. Let's look at the esoteric Buddhism, which is to face things directly. The body is a valuable resource for Dharma practice. You should visualize yourself as the Buddha. You should not harm it or hurt it, but use it to enhance your awareness and practice with the awareness. Directly realize that you have the Bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the awareness. You are the Buddha, right? And with this mentality, the mentality of the afflictions being body, we receive long-term training and Dharma practice. Therefore, one can become a Buddha through the current body in the present lifetime, by working with the afflictions being body. But what I am talking about is a high-level practice method, the great perfection, and afflictions being body, the methods of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice, I am teaching now. What is taught elsewhere is not. I will explain it in detail later. Many other esoteric Buddhist practice methods are not at this level. If it is not at this level, it will not work and the progress will be very slow. Or, some people may even be arrogant to think that they are the deity, and break the precepts carelessly. This is even worse than the Hinayana and the exoteric teachings. So, you need to be clear. Afflictions being body is the cause, and your ability to become a Buddha through the current body in the present lifetime is the result. After a large number of unfortunate events occurred, Buddha Shakyamuni taught his disciples Ampna Smti, and added the prohibition of suicide and the prohibition of persuading others to die to the precept of not killing, because some people persuade others around them, saying, "Why don't you have the courage to commit suicide? Why don't you have the courage to die? Your body is so dirty. Why are you still attached to it? It's better to die." This is persuading death. Also, it is forbidden to praise death. Praising death means, when a person uses a knife to kill someone, some people would applaud and praise that killing a dirty and filthy body helped a person become a Buddha. Because some people did this, praising death was prohibited. What is Ampna Smti? It is also called the mindfulness of breathing. This is a method of practicing dhyana by observing the breath. What is dhyana? Dhyana means meditation. It is a kind of mental practice or meditation. Specifically, it means that one can train one's meditational concentration to enter the form realm. As you know, there are 4 levels of the form realm, the first, second, third and fourth dhyana. Entering different levels of heaven requires different levels of meditational concentration. Dhyana is to train this meditational concentration, and teach you to practice by observing your breathing. Let us see why Buddha Shakyamuni did not establish this precept earlier. If it had been established earlier, the unfortunate accident would not have happened. You should know that precepts are the awareness. If we have the awareness that we should not commit suicide, persuade others to die, or praise others for dying, then so many people would not have died. Why was it added only in the later period? It turns out that when Buddha Shakyamuni first taught people to practice the Dharma, he did not formulate any precepts. He wanted to proceed step by step and slowly. Unexpectedly, the progress was too fast and this tragedy occurred. So, he immediately added these precepts. In fact, after the precepts were revised, these practice methods were retained. The visualization of the body as impure, in the 4 Satipatthanas, is called the first mindfulness, mindfulness of the body. Even now, more than 2,000 years later, it is still preserved. However, as I have explained, any visualization means connection, which can easily lead to entering hell after death. Buddha Shakyamuni first turned the Dharma wheel in Sarnath. Let me explain it now. Why did Buddha Shakyamuni teach such a Dharma? It caused people to die. He had to teach another Dharma and added some precepts to prevent them from dying, because they did not have this kind of awareness. Why did he still keep this mindfulness of the body? Why? Some people criticize Buddha Shakyamuni for not being omniscient. He should have known all this and should have known that if he taught this Sharma, such a tragedy would occur. He should not have taught them this, right? He wanted to teach it, but it turned out to be like this. What exactly is the meaning of omniscience? Some people have raised this question. I will explain this matter today. In fact, you must understand that the Buddha can only advise and teach you. He cannot force your mind to change and follow him. It cannot be forced. Do you know what the cause and condition of Buddha Shakyamuni's first turning of the Dharma wheel was? There were 5 monks, including Ajta Kauinya, who were practicing in the ascetic forest with Buddha Shakyamuni before he became a Buddha. Therefore, he continued to practice the old way of working his body, which was very deeply rooted and popular at the time. They only ate 1 grain of hemp and 1 grain of wheat a day, almost starving themselves to death. At the time, a large number of practitioners starved to death, but could not achieve their goal. However, people thought that these practitioners who could suffer like this must be saints. People praised these practitioners who starved to death to the highest status. Do you know? When a person is about to die, he will have many hallucinations, and say that he sees a lot of lights, and sees something etc. So, people began to praise this ascetic practice. Buddha Shakyamuni had not become a Buddha, and did not understand, so he also learned asceticism. He, Ajta Kauinya and others practiced in this way. However, he later fainted at the Niranjana river, and was rescued by a shepherdess. After recuperation, he developed the awareness and realized that these methods were not feasible, and that a balanced practice was needed. Extreme repression would not work. Therefore, he wanted to save these people, as he felt that it was very miserable for them to be trapped in the sea of suffering. They had all been practicing incorrectly, and were still using these cruel methods to torture themselves. So, after he became a Buddha, he wanted to save these 5 fellow practitioners. Unfortunately, asceticism was deeply rooted in this group of people. The visualization of the body as impure, at that time was not invented by Buddha Shakyamuni, nor was it an original method of the Hinayana. It was an ancient practice method from the past, a practice method by other religions. They were already deeply entrenched, but Buddha Shakyamuni still hoped to save these fellow practitioners. So, he thought that if he suddenly taught them the Mahayana teachings, the awareness, bodhicitta, etc., no one would pay attention, and they would all run away. He would not be able to save them. If he could not save them, it would be in vain. But he really wanted to save them. What could he do? He needed to be more accommodating, and not telling the whole truth at once. Slowly, tell it bit by bit. He would tell a little, then a little more, to test the acceptance level before saying a little more. So, he did not even dare to talk about the precepts. That is, he did not even talk about the precepts that involved the awareness. What then? You can only follow their approach and say the visualization of the body as impure is okay, and you can practice it. However, now I am teaching you to practice it this way. And it became like this. But even if you teach them such a method of practice, their ideas are deeply ingrained, and they will cling to the old ones, adding more to their practice, and as a result, a group of people would practice to the point of going insane. When they went crazy, they killed each other, and a lot of people died. Buddha Shakyamuni felt that this was not going well, and that the teaching needed to be accelerated. So, he formulated the precepts and told them not to cling to the old methods of practice, but to follow the Ampna SMTI practice method that he was now teaching. But this group of people remained entrenched. According to Volume 1 of the Lotus Sutra, an event was recorded. When Buddha Shakyamuni wanted to teach the true Mahayana Dharma, that is, he wanted to tell the whole truth, rather than teaching it bit by bit. Unexpectedly, he started by explaining that they had to cultivate their awareness and had bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the awareness. You do not cultivate it just for yourself. You have to cultivate it for everyone. Your previous method of visualizing the body as impure is an incorrect and unbalanced method of Dharma practice. After he said this, 5,000 Hinayana practitioners immediately left the room. You must know that not everyone has the wisdom to accept these. They had practiced in this way before they followed Buddha Shakyamuni, and it was already deeply rooted. Do you know that in order to save this group of people, Buddha Shakyamuni converted a large number of people, most of whom were practitioners of other religions, to become his disciples? They all had their own methods of practice, and if Buddha Shakyamuni wanted to teach his methods, he had to accommodate them, otherwise they would oppose. Later, after Buddha Shakyamuni had been teaching the Hinayana methods for quite some time, he thought it was time for them to move up a level and wanted to teach the Mahayana. They immediately left the room. It was very rude. Do you know how rude this was? Not only did they cover their ears, they also used body language to tell Buddha Shakyamuni that they did not accept his teachings, and stood up and left their seats. They used body language, such as covering their ears, to show that they did not even want to listen and did not show any respect. What was this? This was disobeying the Guru. Buddha Shakyamuni was their Guru. Disobeying the Guru is a serious precept. It is something that should not be violated in their awareness, but they violated it. 5,000 people stood up and left their seats at the same time, saying that they would not sit down to listen to any teachings on the Mahayana in the future. Nor would they accept or practice. According to the sutra, Buddha Shakyamuni remained silent. He was silent and did not say a word. That is, do you want to leave? He would not stop them, nor would he ask them to stay and listen, because there was no way to ask them to listen. If they would not listen, there was no point in begging. If he forced them, they would resist. And if they returned to previous religions, it would be even worse. The only thing he could do was to keep silent. What else could be done? I have said that the Buddha cannot just nod at you and your mind will immediately change for the better. It is impossible. What can you do? You can only rely on him to teach you through the sutras he painstakingly explained for 49 years. That is, it is only an auxiliary condition and not your main cause. Disobeying the Guru is a serious violation of the precepts. There are regulations in the esoteric Buddhism that cannot be violated. One cannot disobey the Guru unless the Guru is not the real Guru, but a false Guru, in which case of course one must disobey him. If he is a true Guru, you should not disobey him, because in your mind, if there is a disobedient thought thinking, I've already said it. The Guru has done something wrong again. This lid is not used to cover this cup. It can't be covered. He insists on doing it this way, and doesn't listen to me. This Guru is really stupid. Refuse to accept other people's opinions. He even put the lid on the wrong cup. Suppose so. Whether or not he put the wrong lid on the cup is just a small matter, but if you have the mindset of the Guru is really incompetent, it will get you into trouble. In the future, you will change the teachings that your Guru has given you without permission, or remember them incorrectly, and practice them in your own way. This will be bad. You will easily fall into the trap of the Hinayana. Did we not just talk about the tragedy that happened with the Hinayana practitioners? They simply took what Buddha Shakyamuni taught, and changed it back into their own way of practicing, and ended up killing people, after practicing it very diligently. They did not ask Buddha Shakyamuni, is it okay to kill people? Since we'd like to eliminate afflictions, is it okay for me to kill this body? They did not bother to ask questions. As a result, they practiced to the point of going insane. They were simply in a state of madness at the time, and would even do something like killing people. Is that right? Well, as you see, people were trapped in the mental shackles of madness then. If you explained the Mahayana Buddhism to them, 5,000 people would inevitably stand up and leave their seats. This would be considered a mild case. People with a mild case disobey the Guru. They stood up and left their seats, saying, I'd like to tell you, Master. What you say is nonsense. We don't want to listen. Therefore, in order for you to succeed in your Dharma practice and achieve accomplishment, the esoteric Buddhism stipulates that all disciples should follow this rule. Bodhisattva Nagarjuna even collected all the Buddhist literature and combined his practice experience to advise practitioners. If this is a true Guru, please do not disobey him. Small mistakes, such as whether he put the lid on the cup incorrectly, are just a small matter. But in your mind, you will think that the Guru has no real ability, he doesn't know how to install a light bulb, he doesn't know how to repair a pipe, he doesn't even know how to put the lid on a cup, he does everything wrong. He's wrong, but is still asking to use this lid to cover that cup. It's really annoying. I don't want to listen to him. If you disobey him, you will have the thought of disobeying the Guru in your mind, so all the Dharma you practice will be in violation of it, which means you will not be able to practice the Dharma successfully. Who will be in big trouble? Will it harm your Guru who fails to put the lid on the cup properly, or will it harm you who fail to succeed in your Dharma practice? The deeper meaning lies in this. So, you must think slowly and think about this principle. Buddha Shakyamuni did not make a mistake in his estimation. In view of the fact that a large number of his disciples were converted from other religions and were Hinayana Buddhists, it was impossible to explain the Mahayana Buddhism all at once. He could only accommodate them, adopt their old practice methods, extract a part of them, and teach them accordingly. The result was a tragedy. Was the tragedy their fault? Was it the fault of the other religions? Or was it the fault of Buddha Shakyamuni? It was certainly not the fault of Buddha Shakyamuni. It was their problem. However, some people have often accused Buddha Shakyamuni in the past 2,500 years. I want to vindicate Buddha Shakyamuni. This has nothing to do with Buddha Shakyamuni. It is you who are locked in the shackles of other religious teachings. So, I say that you must be very careful when choosing a guru, and which methods of practice. Once you are not careful, you enter the door, listen for a while, and practice for a few years, it has already entered the subconscious, and become deeply rooted. Only then do you realize that it is a deviation, and you want to correct it. But it has become a habit, and cannot be changed. This is a big problem, a very big problem. So, why am I so nervous and explain so much dharmas to you in such detail? Because I hope you will have the ability to save yourself, and will not be deceived by others. Or maybe someone does not want to deceive you, but he himself does not know how to distinguish. He himself is wrong, but he boasts that he is invincible, and he does not let you have your own awareness, nor does he teach you how to develop a way of thinking and teach you how to develop the 5 kinds of wisdom. He does not teach you anything and only wants to use the policy of obscuring people to fool you. He would tell you, oh, it's possible. I tell you, as long as you keep chanting the Buddha's holy names, success is guaranteed. But he does not teach you how to cultivate your mind and Dharma practice. In fact, it requires coordination, and it is not enough to just chant the Buddha's holy names. Chanting the Buddha's holy names is only an auxiliary condition, and without teaching the main cause, he will get you into big trouble. It will get you into big trouble, understand? If you realize at the very end that it does not work, then you will be in great trouble. So, what I am saying today is to save the majority of sentient beings. You need to enhance your awareness and use wisdom to judge everything. Once you add it carelessly into your Dharma practice method, and it becomes a subconscious and deep-rooted habit, you cannot change it. It will become your shackles and chains, and you will be locked in. You have abided in the notion. You may think that this method only requires chanting the Buddha's holy names, or chanting this mantra, do this and do that. The result is that you will lose your awareness, and will not be able to practice the Dharma successfully. It may even become something that harms you. You must be careful about this. The tragedy of the Hinayana practitioners was derived from this. Let's look at the second mindfulness, visualizing feelings as suffering. Suffering. Do you want to be free from pain in the second safety needs? Free from illnesses? Free from threats? Do not think like that. Such things already exist. You should visualize that all feelings are painful. Visualize that all feelings in the world are painful. Always think about the word pain. How pitiful. It will be hard for you to be free from pain. In the future, you will be connected to the magnetic field of pain, and when you die, you will go to the filthy land of pain. They say not to be attached to the feeling of happiness. You should be disgusted with the world. From this, a practice method was developed that allows the body to feel pain. Let's talk about it. An example, in modern times, is a method called Sunluan Vipassana meditation. It requires one to inhale deeply. Breathe firmly, forcefully, and rapidly. You have to exert so much force that the force reaches a very strong level, and the air you inhale should feel like a needle piercing into the internal organs of your body to be considered past. I had a disciple who studied the Sunluan Vipassana meditation in the past. He said that it was very pitiful and painful. You cannot imagine that breathing can cause people such pain. He said that one must inhale forcefully and continuously, and if he did not feel any pain he would be scolded. One must be able to inhale the air forcefully to impact the internal organs until it hurts, and that is what is considered correct. He said that he could not describe the pain, because it was too painful. So painful that he was twitching. He failed to practice it, so he did not continue to practice it. It turns out that this method of practice requires you to concentrate on the sensation of breathing. In fact, Buddha Shakyamuni did not teach this method. The Anapanasati method he taught to observe the breath was not like this. He told you to observe the breath, but he did not tell you to turn the breathing into a needle to prick yourself. And this Vipassana meditation method requires you to feel pain, cramps, numbness, heat or cold in your body, which is considered very good. Focus on the most obvious and acute feelings, and do not relax. Suan Luan says that the painful feeling of suffering is the law of enlightenment, the law that allows you to achieve enlightenment, accomplishment, and Buddhahood. He says that pleasure will make you float between life and death. The effect of suffering is to overcome suffering. If you can endure the pain of having your internal organs pierced by a needle, then you can also endure the pain of greed, hatred, and ignorance. If you can endure the torture of any disease, then what else is there to be afraid of? Let us get sick, let the disease torture you for a while. That is good, too. When you are sick to the point of being out of breath, you will feel the pain, and then you will know that you need to get out, right? He says to use pain to overcome greed, hatred, and ignorance. You can improve your awareness by feeling pain. You should realize the feelings of pain. Realize the feelings of being pricked by a needle. This is called the awareness. Isn't this what other religions used to call asceticism? It is to escape from pain, hoping to achieve spiritual accomplishment in the future, and escape from pain, so now you make yourself more miserable. What logic do you think this is? In fact, this will cause harm to your body, do you know? They use asceticism to harm their bodies all day long, thinking that this can free them from pain. You must be mistaken. If you ask a psychologist to study their practice methods, they will simply think they are insane. However, many people believe it, and many people follow it to practice. These people are not crazy, so what is the reason? They are deceived. After falling into the subconscious mind, they are deceived again, and it becomes the truth. This is so pitiful. What I teach you is not to abide in negative emotions and to create positive thinking, but you are actually abiding in the notion of pain, and making yourself more miserable. This is called extremely abiding in the notion of negative emotions. How can you create positive thinking? Your thinking is wrong. How can you create positive thinking? What is this asceticism? It is wrong. What does it mean to enhance awareness through feeling pain? Is this how one realizes the awareness? This is wrong. Asceticism is actually popular in India. Religions that advocate asceticism in India include Jainism, Hinduism, etc. Ascetics must endure what ordinary people consider to be painful things, such as fasting for a long time without food or water, lying on a bed full of nails, walking on hot charcoal, enduring extreme heat or cold, etc., to exercise their endurance. They say that if you have patience and can endure the pain, then you will not be afraid of any pain. Being able to endure these pains means being able to face the pains, and you will definitely be able to get rid of greed, hatred, and ignorance. This is their theory. Some people stand on one leg for decades. They are training endurance called detachment from desire. Letting go of your desires and just loving the pain, this can help you give up your desires. Then, your pain becomes another kind of desire. You feel that you can only cultivate it if you feel it, and this is your desire. This is going from one extreme to another. Look at this man. He raises his hands high. Do you know that he cannot put his hands down for decades, or even his entire life? Isn't it miserable to practice hard in this way? In addition to India, some religions in other countries also have ascetic practices. Catholicism had this in the past. There is another religion that does the same now. They have a festival. During this festival, they would expose their upper bodies and flagellate themselves with whips. As you know, a whip is soft, and when you use it to whip your body, it will cause your skin to tear and bleed. There are even more exaggerated ones, Some use iron chains as whips, and the chains are covered with many sharp blades. When the iron chains hit their bodies, they immediately cut their bodies and blood flows out. There are these photos on the internet, but they are too cruel. I do not want to display them. I only picked this one with one hand raised. Just assume that he raised his hand to agree with what I said. I do not wish to show such cruel photos. There are still these things going on in the world today. The purpose is to do it through pain and bloodshed, first, to cleanse one's own sins as a form of repentance. Second, not to be attached to your own physical body. Third, as a method to achieve spiritual accomplishment. They practice it in these ways. During the Tang dynasty, when Master Xuanzang went to India to seek Buddhist sutras, he recorded the ascetic practices of some ascetics in ancient India. It was like this. First drove a pile into the river, and then erected a very tall pillar. Next to the pillar, there were many slightly shorter pillars. Every morning, large groups of ascetics climbed up these pillars. One hand was placed on a tall pillar, one foot on a short pillar, and raised the other hand and foot in the air. Raised the head high, straightened the neck, looked in the direction of the sun, and slowly rotated with the sun to practice. Watching the sun rotating in the sky, people were also rotating. Some people had been practicing here for decades. Why? To train their endurance. I'm so incredible that I can practice in any position. Are they practicing their bodies or their minds? They say that if you can persist in practicing your body like this, you will definitely be able to practice your mind. Aren't you suffering enough? Being exposed to the sun and rain, and feeling almost fainted from the heat, hasn't your body suffered enough? Your body is already stiff, but you still have to keep turning. You have nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and no way to go to the toilet. Isn't that hard enough? This makes your body weak, and many people could not hold on any longer, and fell into the river and drowned. The Digambara sect of the Jainism, the sky-clad ascetics, advocates asceticism, while the Vetambara, the white-clad ascetics, does not. As I said, there are many different sects, even within the same religion there are different sects. They do not eat meat, nor do they eat fruit and vegetables. Why can't they eat fruit and vegetables? All things have spirits. Some of them may have psychic abilities, and know that plants are alive and have spirits. From the perspective of not killing, plants, like meat, should not be eaten. Therefore, their sect believes that all things have spirits, including plants, so they are not allowed to be eaten. They must fall from the tree, and die on their own. When fruit are dead and no longer have spirits, they can be eaten. It is similar to what we call pure meat. What are the three pure meat? How can it be considered clean? What is unclean? Unclean meat is meat that still has life attached to it. If you butcher it and eat it, it is not clean. Pure meat, clean meat, is meat that has died on its own and you can eat it. I have said it before, so I will not explain it in detail now. Fruit, vegetables, and plants should all be treated the same way. Wait for them to fall, die, and wither before you can eat them. Otherwise, you cannot eat them. That is, you can only eat the fruit that have dropped. In addition, there is a kind of practice which uses fasting to achieve physical purity. As a result, countless people die in India every year from starvation. Okay, let's look at these methods now. These are all unbalanced practice methods. Because the true awareness is not gained by feeling physical pain and pleasure. What exactly is the awareness? What should we realize in order to improve our awareness? To sum up, firstly, we need to be aware of all our actions of body, speech, and mind. Are they in line with the practice methods of precepts, correct views and knowledge, and balance? In short, an unbalanced method is not good. Right? Do you need to be aware of your actions of body, speech and mind, and whether they are in line with the Buddhist precepts, correct views and knowledge, and actions in the middle path, i.e. balance? Secondly, you need to be aware of the transformation process of your mind. Through the 5 steps of the mind cultivating procedure, one can transform the mind into the 5 wisdoms. That is, you must be aware of your mind, the actions of your body, speech, and mind, and the process of transformation of your mind. Do you conform to the procedures for Dharma practice and cultivating your mind? You need to be aware of all of these. These are the real ways to enhance your awareness. Thirdly, you need to be aware of the improvement of the 5 wisdoms. Have you developed the 5 kinds of wisdom? Have you scored 0.5 points? Has it been improved? If it has been improved, you need to lead it into the state of oneness, emptiness, neither existence nor voidness. Oh, I already have 0.5 points of the 5 wisdoms. Very good. I will immediately lead the 0.5 points into the state of oneness of emptiness. So, by accumulating little by little, slowly my emptiness will become very pure, and my 5 wisdoms will develop more and more. That is, asceticism is a kind of biased view. It is a kind of ignorance. It will cause our practice method to deviate. It is impossible to transform the mind into the 5 wisdoms. So, if someone asks you, your master always tells you that you need to improve your awareness, what methods are there? Your answer should be the methods of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice. You need to realize a few things. What do you need to be aware of? You need to know how to answer these questions. There are 3. These 3 things will definitely be tested in future exams. He keeps telling you to be aware. What do you want to be aware of? Do you want to be aware of how much pain you are in? Do you want to be aware of how heartbroken you are when you lose your gold brick? Do we need to be aware of all these? No. It turns out that we need to be aware of the 1, 2, and 3 mentioned earlier. Do you understand? This is definitely a question for the exam. In addition to being aware of these 3 things, we must also connect them to a mindset, the mindset of afflictions being body. You need to practice with the mindset of the afflictions being body, and work with these 3 kinds of awareness to succeed. If you apply it incorrectly using the Hinayanas, eliminating afflictions to attain body, these 3 kinds of awareness will be wrong. Or, if you apply incorrectly using the wrong exoteric teaching of transforming afflictions into body in conjunction with these 3 kinds of awareness to practice, your progress will be extremely slow. There is no hope to become a Buddha through the current body. You must use afflictions being body in conjunction with these 3 kinds of awareness to practice. This is definitely a question in future exams for my disciples. Even if one can achieve the state of having an incorruptible body after death, it does not mean that there will be no deviations in his mind. Just look at the method Sun Lun teaches. I think the method he teaches is biased. I have explained it for you to understand. However, some people say, no. His practice is great. His body is indestructible. Even after death, the body still exists. Other religions have had cases where the body continues to exist after death. It is not necessary to rely on this kind of practice method for the body to exist. In fact, we are cultivating the mind, not cultivating the substances. Do not get it wrong. It is about cultivating the awareness, not about cultivating substances. If you focus on material cultivation, and enter into a state of meditation frequently so that all the microcirculation in your body can meet your ideals, then your body will certainly not decay, and your physical body will continue to exist after death. However, if you focus on cultivating your mind instead of your body, you may not have relics when you die. I have explained before that many cats and dogs have relics after cremation. This is related to the temperature during cremation. Some Dharma practitioners do not leave behind a physical body after death. The physical body will still decay, but the decay of the physical body does not mean that their minds cannot enter the state of oneness. These are 2 different things. It is cultivating the mind rather than cultivating the body. Many other religious practitioners emphasize the cultivation of the body, so that their bodies can remain incorruptible. Look at the Taoist priests. Many of them can keep their bodies intact after death. The Catholic Church has this, too. The Catholic Church has a few people whose bodies have not decayed. Their bodies could remain. Therefore, the fact that the physical body does not decay does not mean that the mind can enter the state of oneness. Those other religious practitioners, needless to ask, definitely cannot enter the state of oneness. You must know that what you need to cultivate is the awareness and the consciousness, not substances. Make no mistake. Why didn't he have any relics? Why did his body decay? None of these matters. This is different from practicing the Dharma to become a Buddha and escape from the cycle of reincarnation. Do not get it wrong. Other religious practices can keep the body intact after death. Well, not transforming means that because of not understanding and lack of wisdom, the things you think about are distorted. Therefore, you will often hear people scolding others, saying, "You can't even transform." Scolding others for not transforming is really too persistent. You are obsessed with a physical body, thinking that the existence of the physical body means that your sect is successful. This is wrong. If both the body and mind are not transformed, you cannot enter the state of oneness. Do not worry about your body first. The most important thing is whether your mind has improved. This is the key point. Some people say, some practitioners of our religions have cultivated to the point where they can fly in the air. The esoteric Buddhism has that, too. Other religions have that. They can fly in the air. Does this mean that their minds can enter the state of oneness? Of course not. Because they focus on cultivating the body, regulating the qi, and training the circulation of the qi, can make the body fly. However, this does not mean that one can enter the state of oneness. These are two completely different things. I explain this in the hope that you will no longer be obsessed with these supernatural powers. Okay. The third mindfulness is called visualizing the mind as being impermanent. What is your mind thinking about? Where is it abiding? The Diamond Sutra states that we should not abide in any notion. So, where does my mind abide? The Hinayana says that we should abide and be aware of everything, including our minds that arise and perish in an instant. Everything is impermanent and changes at any time. It is just suffering, empty, and without self. The Hinayana requires you to do this. The view of the Hinayana Buddhism requires you to develop renunciation, not the bodhicitta. Because its mindfulness does not abide in bodhicitta, that is, it does not abide in their awareness, so it is a kind of deviation. Their mindfulness never abides in the awareness, but in renunciation. We just said that we need to have the awareness. They do not know how to develop the bodhicitta, so they are abiding in the wrong place and have deviated. They are abiding in the mind of leaving, escaping, and avoiding, which is a kind of imbalance. So, they are abiding in emptiness. What kind of emptiness is it? It is no self, that is, emptiness on the self of the person, but there is no emptiness on the self of the Dharma. They only care about the non-existence of the person, and think that after killing the body and if even the body is gone, they can enter the state of emptiness on the self of the person. So they have such an illusion. In fact, there is also emptiness on the self of the Dharma. We should not be attached to the manifestations of all things in the world. But they do not understand this, so it is a kind of imbalance, and they will fail in their cultivation. Okay. The fourth mindfulness is visualizing the Dharma without self, called the mindfulness of the Dharma, which is another big topic. Let's talk about it. In the Hinayana, what is the mindfulness of the Dharma? What is visualizing the Dharma without self? The Northern tradition is divided into the 6 internal sense bases, 5 hindrances, and 7 factors of enlightenment. The Southern tradition is divided into 5 categories: the 5 hindrances, the 5 aggregates, the 6 internal and external sense bases, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 4 noble truths. Let's talk about them one by one. The 5 hindrances are the 5 obstacles to the practice of meditational concentration. The 5 obstacles are desire, i.e. greed, anger, i.e. greed and hatred, dullness and sleep, i.e. the kind of ignorance, restlessness and regret. For example, when you are meditating, you may suddenly think of a chicken thigh. The chicken thigh will taste delicious, and the thought that you must eat the chicken thigh tonight will make you want to meditate now. You are meditating now, you should not be thinking too much. But if you keep thinking about a series of things starting from the chicken thigh, it is called restlessness and regret. And you keep chasing this line of thoughts. These are obstacles to the practice of meditation. Also, you are suspicious. I have seen this thing in meditation, and light appeared. This is doubt. That is, your mind cannot concentrate. There are 5 things in total, but I do not have time to say too much. I am not teaching the Hinayana Buddhism now, but the esoteric Buddhism. However, I must let you gain a deep understanding of how others practice, so that you can make comparisons. Let me give you an example. Regarding desires, for instance, the Dhyanikithi collection of long discourses of the Tripitaka, volume 22 of the Masatipana, The Great Mindfulness, Sutta states this. How do you cultivate in terms of desires? You need to know how desires arise before they do. You need to know how to give up desires that have already arisen. You also need to know how to prevent the desires that have been abandoned from arising again in the future. When it talks about these things, it is rather vague. For example, how to know, how to start, how to master the method of knowing, etc. It is not mentioned here, right? However, you will see that the mind cultivating procedure we teach is much more detailed. In fact, understanding how desires arise and how to get rid of them are similar to what we are teaching now as analysis. Only similar. How do you know that you will not have this thing again in the future? How do we know how to prevent it from arising again? This is similar to what we teach, finding the root and treating it. We ask you to be very careful and make sure to find your root, so that you can successfully treat it. You need to slowly analyze what this root is about. When I teach the analysis, I even explain psychology to you. We also analyze very carefully. You need to set goals, but how do you set goals? You need to set goals based on what you are scolded for at the time. If you analyze it carefully layer by layer, you will be very sure of how to analyze it. But if you just sit, not moving, and say you are meditating now. We want to understand how greed arises. That is too bad. It is so vague. How can we understand it? How can we give it up and prevent it from arising again? So, you think about it for a long time, but cannot work it out. This is because it is not detailed enough. What should the practice be like? Some aspects require great detail. For example, finding your root could be your goal. You do not say that you must find the root. You only say that you want to understand how to prevent it from arising again. If you do not talk about seeking roots, it means that you do not talk about goals. Seeking roots itself is the goal. You have no direction, no goal. It means that you do not know. It turns out that if I want to know how to prevent such things from happening again in the future, I must find this root. If we cannot find the root, we cannot treat it. This is not prescribing the right medicine for the illness. As a result, we will deviate. Only after finding the root can we treat it and prescribe the right medicine. If you do not have these very detailed goals, and root finding and treatment, without these 2 directions, you will not succeed. Anyway, if I do not explain it to you, you will not understand. I have said it now. You will say, oh, is that so? I understand now. Try to see if you will understand if I do not tell you. Look at the past 2,500 years, they only knew how to practice like this. How did they deal with these 3 things? They only knew how to sit and meditate, but to no avail. This is because they lacked something, lacking a goal and direction. So, do not underestimate the 5 steps in the mind cultivating procedure that I teach you now. They give you goals and directions, so you can succeed. Okay, let's take a look. We must learn to accept the mind of deep-seated confidence, sad, and mind of thoughtful awareness of the 10 beliefs. We must firmly believe in cause and effect and accept the situation. We must have faith in the Guru and develop the awareness. They definitely lack the 3rd. They do not understand what all sentient beings are Buddhas means, right? They do not care whether sentient beings are Buddhas or not, and they do not set the goal of Bodhisattva. You see, they have so many shortcomings. In comparison, what I am teaching you now is much more complete. Just think about it. If you lack one of these 3, you will not be able to succeed in your Dharma practice. The Hinayana lacks this one thing, or at least the 3rd one, right? But in fact, many of them are missing. Okay, questioning, ask questions diligently. It turns out that goals need to be set, and the goals must be based on evidence. Do they have any? There is no teaching about this. They ask you to see if you have greed, hatred, and ignorance, but they do not mention whether you have committed wrongdoings due to greed, hatred, and ignorance. Then analyze according to the goals. They do not set goals, so how can they analyze based on the goals? They do not teach this. The Hinayana does not teach the need to collect information and analyze the right time, place, and people. You need to analyze why greed, hatred, and ignorance arise based on the precepts you observe and the Dharma. They only want you to understand the reasons why greed, hatred, and ignorance arise. The details are not taught. Isn't it a big topic? Yes, this is a big topic, and I am teaching you now. This kind of mindfulness of the Dharma means that you need to contemplate certain things. It is similar to the questioning, analyzing, root finding, and treating of our mind cultivating procedure. It is similar, but only barely. There are many things missing. Because their mentality is to escape, they are doomed. The most basic thing is absent. They lack the most important first step, acceptance. Since their mentality is to escape instead of the afflictions being body, they have already failed halfway. And then they lack the first step of acceptance, and they are doomed. They do not have this. Without this first step of acceptance as the foundation, what will happen to the subsequent questioning, analyzing, root finding, and treating? It will be impossible to achieve a balance. However, I still want to praise the Hinayana. Why? It is still better than the exoteric Buddhist teachings. The exoteric teachings have nothing, not even these basics. The Hinayana practice is more down to earth. You can see that it is very detailed. It is the foundation of our Dharma practice. But what do you have to understand? Abandon its shortcomings and absorb its strengths. I can tell you that there are many people who practice the exoteric Buddhism, or the esoteric Buddhism. They do not have good people to teach them, and they do not follow a good guru. As you know, the exoteric Buddhist practitioners know how to chant the Buddha's holy names, nothing else. So, how can they treat all these? Later, many people, during the process of practice, found that their practice was ineffective, and so they switched to practice the Hinayana. They also fell in love with Hinayana, and thought that Hinayana teachings were great. This is how they switched to practice the Hinayana. However, the Hinayana has many shortcomings. In fact, Buddha Shakyamuni hoped to change them to turn to the Mahayana. Unexpectedly, no one paid any attention to him. Therefore, this allows it to remain and continue to be circulated in the world today, more than 2,000 years later. People do not know how to distinguish, so big problems arise. For more than 2,000 years, no one has taught the mind cultivating procedure. Before I taught it, no one had ever taught the mind cultivating procedure. No one had ever taught it. No one knew that the entire process of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice must work with the Diamond Sutra's oral pith instructions. The Diamond Sutra has 2 oral pith instructions, and no one had ever taught them. No one had taught us how to apply these 2 oral pith instructions. It turns out that they are to be used in conjunction with emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, the state of oneness. No one had taught this, either. In short, no one had ever taught the 5 steps of cultivating the mind and Dharma practice. No one had ever taught the details of the mind cultivating procedure, and what it means to accept, ask questions, etc. So, there are people in the Hinayana who know how to analyze, find the root, and treat it. Even if it is just similar, it feels like a treasure. No one had ever taught this before. This was a good thing. Therefore, many people turn to practice the Hinayana Buddhism and hold on to it. In fact, I admire their down-to-earth and meticulous way of Dharma practice. However, it has its shortcomings. As long as you change their mindset, and then incorporate all the mind training and mindset I teach, isn't that actually the great perfection that I teach now? Then it will be different, a complete transformation. If you practice the Hinayana, but do not know how to distinguish the shortcomings, what I can explain to you now is only a small part. I do not have the time to explain too much. Once you follow and practice the Hinayana, it will be a big problem. If you do not know how to correct its shortcomings, you will be locked in a mental shackle. When you finally realize it, it has become a habit of your subconscious, and cannot be changed. Even if I teach you to practice the esoteric Buddhism, you will not know how to practice it, nor will you be willing to practice it. You will be just like those disciples who disobeyed Buddha Shakyamuni. So, you must remember. Never enter the wrong door, and do not learn the wrong method. Even if you can enter to learn the esoteric Buddhism, do not choose the wrong guru, or the wrong method of practice. Otherwise, you will be doomed. Do not think that learning the esoteric Buddhism is great, and that you can become a Buddha in the present lifetime. If you find a wrong guru, he will not teach cultivating the mind and Dharma practice. Even the cultivation of the mind is taught in a random manner. Everything he teaches is vague, not detailed, and cannot be applied. Then he teaches you to visualize the deity, with 3 heads and 6 arms, very powerful. As a result, you often violate the precepts. And he does not say much about the precepts. The precepts are the awareness, but he disagrees. He considers them to be a constraint. It would be terrible if he teaches everything in reverse order. Then you would all have to fall into the 3 lower realms. Yes, many people who practice the esoteric Buddhism would go to the 3 lower realms, because they have strong visualization abilities, and once they are connected to the wrong place, they would go to the 3 lower realms all of a sudden. Therefore, you must be careful in all your visualization. You really have to be very careful about what you visualize. Well, this is to tell you, be careful in making your choices. But I must praise them, they are really meticulous. I have now only explained greed among the 5 hindrances. The others are similar, and will not be explained separately. Now let's talk about the 5 aggregates. They are the 5 aggregates, namely form, feeling, perception, action and the mind. I have explained them before. You can re-watch the 7th episode of the Compassion series, available from our Dudjom Buddhist Association, International's TV channel on YouTube, entitled Visualization Practice on the Nature of the 5 Aggregates as Emptiness in Heart Sutra. You can play and watch the video. You can also watch the 38th episode, using the oral pith instructions of the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra to solve difficult problems, and the 5 dangers affecting reincarnation. The Dhyanikithi, collection of long discourses, of the Tripitaka, Volume 22 of the Masatipana for Great Mindfulness, Sutta states this. How to cultivate the 5 aggregates. You want the 5 aggregates to be emptied, emptying these 5 databases. But I do not know how to practice. There are instructions in the Hinayana teachings. This is the reason why some people want to turn to the Hinayana. Firstly, such as form. You should know that all substances, or appearances are like this. You have to know for sure that this is the case. Secondly, the gathering of such forms. How are they collected so that you become attached to them and abide in them? Thirdly, the elimination of such forms. How do you later get rid of them, stop abiding in such substances and appearances, and eliminate them? One bad thing here is the use of the word elimination. Have I not told you that the information in your 5 aggregates must not be destroyed or completely erased? If all the information is gone, you will become an idiot. I told you that it should not be like that. This is where they went wrong. They say eliminate it, destroy it, erase it, wipe it out, and thus mislead many people. I do not know how Buddha Shakyamuni taught them back then. Buddha Shakyamuni would definitely not teach them like this. But the question is, they used the word elimination. After more than 2,500 years, have they added salt and vinegar to their practice? Have they distorted the teachings of Buddha Sakyamuni? I do not know. Buddha Shakyamuni had attained the perfect enlightenment, and he would definitely not teach it incorrectly. As their mentality is to escape and regard troubles as enemies, and they also use the word elimination, they want to eliminate the things that make them attached. If they become obsessed with the word eliminate, they will really erase everything and become idiots. Also, because they were obsessed with the word elimination and wanted to eliminate it, they later became bold enough to kill people with knives. In short, the word elimination is a bad and unbalanced word. If it is not elimination, what should it be? It is one should not abide anywhere to arouse the mind. I am not drawn by it. I do not cling to it and develop the awareness. This is what Buddha Shakyamuni taught. Do you understand? That is, elimination itself is an unbalanced state of mind, which should not be had. The goal and direction is not to eliminate afflictions, but to develop the awareness. When you develop the awareness, you will naturally not cling to afflictions, and there will be no afflictions. There is no need to eliminate, right? Afflictions are actually your awareness. Okay, let's talk about what the 6 internal and external sense bases are. The 6 internal and external sense places are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dharma. I have just mentioned them and it is still fresh in your memory, right? That is, the 6 dusts and 6 organs, 6 roots, are called the 6 internal and external sense bases. This is what is taught the Dhyanikithi, collection of long discourses, of the Tripitaka, volume 22 of the Masatipana, the Great Mindfulness, Sutta. It turns out that there is a method to practice this, and there is also a method to practice the 18 chains. How do you practice them? Why do those people turn to practice the Hinayana? Because it is indeed very detailed. Look, the 18 chains can be cultivated, and the 5 aggregates can also be cultivated. This is the only way to do it. This is what they think in their hearts. However, they do not know which ones have problems and which ones do not. They do not know how to distinguish them. Now let me tell you. Knowing the eye, you must know clearly what the eye is. Knowing color, what is the eye used to see? To see the shape, to watch the scene, and to look at the material. You need to have a clear idea of what they originally look like. Knowing the knot that arises from the condition of these two. Why do your eyes fall on this kind of color? What is the cause that can draw your eyes to look at it and become attached to it? Knowing how the know that has not arisen arises. You used to not being attached to it. You see a beautiful woman and think she is beautiful, but you are not supposed to miss her day and night. Why do you miss her even when you are asleep? Have you been thinking about her for a long time? How did this not arise? Why did it arise? These are what you need to know. Knowing how to break the knot that has arisen. How did you get rid of this beautiful woman? You stopped dreaming about her. You stopped clinging to her, right? Knowing how to prevent the knots you have already let go from arising again in the future. If one day a beautiful woman suddenly appears, will you become attached to her again? How can you finally let go of her and stop being attached to this kind of thing? Can you see it? It teaches you 6 steps. Isn't that detailed enough? Great. I think it is great, too. The Hinayana's methods are more practical, so you will see that it is very detailed and is the foundation of our Dharma practice. How would the exoteric Buddhism teach you this? The exoteric Buddhist teachings do not have these. However, you must know how to discard weaknesses and absorb strengths. This is how we will teach our mind-cultivating procedure in the future. Of course, it will be more detailed and works with the mentality of the great perfection, right? These must be taught slowly, not now. Remember, you must use the mentality of the afflictions being body. Do not use the wrong one. Okay. The 7 factors of enlightenment are the 7 factors of enlightenment: mindfulness, selection of dharmas, diligence, easiness, meditational concentration, and relinquishing. As time is limited, I will only choose one of them as an example to explain. The others are similar. You can follow the same example. What is mindfulness? You should always remember your meditational concentration and wisdom. Never forget them. You should always think of the correct Dharma, that is, the right Dhamma, and keep your meditational concentration and wisdom equal. In other words, if you do not have meditational concentration, you cannot develop wisdom. How can you have wisdom if you are in a mess? If you have a little wisdom but it is not stable, that is, it is fluctuating, you may suddenly have wisdom but quickly forget it. You cannot run or apply it. You lack the stability to help you apply it. So, this is not good. Therefore, it says that meditational concentration and wisdom should be equal. Thinking about the practice method means that you shall always think about the method you want to practice. That is, now your master teaches you the 5 steps of the mind cultivating procedure. Whenever you come across anything in your daily life, you should immediately apply these 5 mind training steps. Otherwise, what is it? You are not practicing. You practice not only by chanting mantras during the meditational Dharma practice, but also during the post-meditational Dharma practice. Otherwise, how can you clear your 5 aggregates, the 5 databases, at the time of death? You need to practice, right? You just need to have this kind of mindfulness factor. This is the reason why some people turn to practice the Hinayana. This is stated in the Daya-Nikathi, collection of long discourses, of the Tripitaka, volume 22 of the Masatipana, the Great Mindfulness, Sutta. Firstly, you need to understand how the mindfulness factor, that has not yet arisen, arises. Secondly, you need to understand how to cultivate the mindfulness factor, that has already arisen to perfection. Thirdly, the other 6 factors of enlightenment are similar. These 7 factors of enlightenment are what we need to achieve in our mind cultivating procedure. This is what we need to do to improve our awareness. This is why I still praise the Hinayana practitioners. The exoteric Buddhist teachings have nothing. They only know how to recite the Buddha's holy names. Learn from others. How meticulous they are. You need to be so meticulous to succeed in your Dharma practice. What I am teaching you now, the esoteric Buddhism, is of course more complete. This is what you need to know. Now let's talk about the 4 Noble Truths. The 4 Noble Truths are suffering, accumulating, cessation, and path. You need to know what suffering is, understand the true nature of suffering, how it accumulates, and why it disappears later. I have already said not to use the word elimination. The last one is how you achieve enlightenment. What is the method you use? This is stated in the Daya-Nikathi, collection of long discourses, of the Tripitaka, volume 22 of the Masatipana, the Great Mindfulness, Sutta. Firstly, you need to truly know that this is suffering. So, those people immediately contemplate suffering. It is very painful. Even if there is no suffering, they will create it. I think they have interpreted the Buddhist sutra wrongly. Secondly, truly understand that this is the accumulation of suffering. How are those sufferings accumulated? Thirdly, truly understand that this is the cessation of suffering. Suffering is finally gone. Fourthly, truly understand that this is the path that leads to the end of suffering. What is the method to make suffering disappear? C. The cessation of suffering, which is used to help you develop renunciation. That is, do you want to be free from suffering? You must first experience this suffering to help you know how to escape from suffering. However, their use of the words elimination of suffering is not very good. If you focus too much on suffering and its elimination, you will develop a kind of attachment, abiding in the notion of suffering and the notion of elimination, which will easily lead to losing balance in Dharma practice. Okay, that is all we have to say about the 4 Noble Truths for now. It says that you have to be constantly aware. What to be aware of? Their awareness is different from ours. You need to constantly be aware of the sudden existence and extinction, impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and non-self of the 5 hindrances, 5 aggregates, 6 internal and external sense bases, and the 7 factors of enlightenment, and eventually you will realize the 4 Noble Truths. This is the practice method of the Hinayana Buddhism, which is a biased awareness that must be corrected. Otherwise, it is impossible to reach the level of the perfect enlightenment. Remember, the awareness I am teaching you now is the awareness of these 3 things, which should be coordinated with afflictions being body, and it is not the awareness claimed by the Hinayana practitioners. Ours is something that has been elevated by many levels. You must remember that the esoteric Buddhism's afflictions being body is a way to deal with and avoid pain, threats, or illness. Okay, now let's see what will happen if the 2 needs and demands we explain today are not met. What is the real meaning of the existence of religion? Let's take a look. No matter which religion it is, the purpose is, firstly, to be able to get rid of suffering forever. Secondly, one can obtain eternal happiness. No matter what supernatural powers of the God claimed by any one or religion, or even the God, has the ability to create the universe, this is not the point. You should definitely look into his teachings to see if there is any way to help you enter the state of oneness. You need to know why. As all gods, no matter how powerful they are actually unable to escape the law of cause and effect in a dualistic or multiplistic state. Not even a Buddha can do that. A Buddha has the ability to enter the state of oneness at any time. But it is impossible for him to violate the law of cause and effect in a dualistic or multiplistic state. He cannot do that. Let alone any of other gods. You may say, no. I created the universe, and I can also destroy it. Then we can also create an iPhone, and we can also destroy this iPhone. Do you think there is a need for this? Do you understand that creating something does not mean that he is God? Being able to use something does not mean that he is God. And having the ability to destroy something does not mean that he is God. He only has greater power than us, so he can do a little more than us. However, this does not mean that his mind can enter the state of oneness, the perfect enlightenment. These are two different things. If he is in a dualistic or multiplistic state, he cannot escape the law of cause and effect. So, you need to know, what is religion? Why do you choose a religion? How can it help you? In fact, it cannot help you get rid of suffering and be happy forever. Only those that can teach you to successfully enter the state of oneness are feasible. Any sentient being who wants to obtain the above two benefits must enhance his awareness until he can enter the Dharma realm, the state of oneness, to be able to achieve the above two goals. Therefore, no matter what religion it is, if the doctrine it promotes says that God can abolish the law of cause and effect and can directly save any sentient being, claiming, believe in me, I will save you and you will have eternal life. If it tells you this, it is clearly deceiving you, or it is deceiving itself. If it is possible to obtain the above two benefits without improving the awareness of these sentient beings, and you believe in him, those who believe will be saved, there is no need to improve any awareness, just believe in me superstitiously, this must be a lie. Or, he does not understand how the nature truly works. That is, this God does not understand what the state of oneness is at all. He does not even know that there is such a thing as eternal happiness, nor does he know that all sentient beings actually possess this kind of awareness and this kind of ability. He does not even understand these things. And yet, he still says that you were created by him. Yes, he might have created a physical body, but the mind of that sentient being automatically connects to this physical body to be reborn. He says that he created it, but he did not create those minds. God. You created the iPhone, which is just a hardware. That is, you created the human body, or you created the earth, you created the universe, no problem. You have created a lot of hardware, but the mind that is injected into these hardware is not created by you. Those actually come from the Dharma realm, the deviated awareness, as I have explained before about the 12 causes and conditions, injected into these physical bodies and become sentient beings. These are two different things. You keep saying that God created everything. Okay, suppose you are right, no problem. Keep creating. Many gods have great supernatural powers and can create many things. But they do not create sentient beings. They can only create the bodies of sentient beings and not the minds of sentient beings. Minds are not created by them. Do you understand? Therefore, you must understand clearly and do not be deceived. Do not believe in the wrong religion. If this religion forces people to believe in these things, it will cause all sentient beings' self-help ability to be completely lost. Of course, if everyone only knows how to pray to gods, Buddhas, or Bodhisattvas, and only knows how to seek help from outside, and does not know how to improve their own awareness to save themselves, then how can they enter the state of oneness? If you only know how to always ask others for help, your awareness will slowly degenerate. You will become more and more ignorant, and you will fall into eternal pain. So, how do we judge whether a certain religion or sect has the ability to help sentient beings achieve the above two requirements? The following factors should be used to make the judgment. First, balance, which is a must-test question for my disciples. If the practice methods taught by this religion or sect cannot achieve balance, even for the basic needs, physiological needs and safety needs, and instead become a bondage, or a more painful situation, then this religion or sect will be a bondage, a cage. This is what the Hinayana practitioners are like. When asked to switch to the Mahayana, they would not even pay attention to the Buddha. All sentient beings must break free from this bondage and cage, otherwise, due to the distortion of their minds, they will be trapped in eternal suffering for endless lifetimes to come. Therefore, many people who practice the Hinayana Buddhism, because they practice suffering all day long and abide in the notion suffering, they will enter hell and fall into eternal suffering. Buddha Shakyamuni wanted to save them, but they ignored him. So, he had no way to save them. Do you understand? An unbalanced practice method will harm sentient beings. Why do I need to analyze it so carefully today? Because I feel that sentient beings have been suffering for thousands of years. Everyone practices the Dharma because they want to get rid of suffering. They have spent so much energy, time, and money on cultivation. Why would you put them into a more painful environment? How could you bear to do that? Perhaps you were ignorant before and did not know. So, you insisted that your sect was great. So great that you wanted others to believe you no matter what. You gave people rice and oil, and you wanted others to believe you. You also gave them milk powder. Is that enough? If we really want to save that person, we must develop a true bodhicitta and compassion, pity the spirit and sincerity they put in to learn. Please give them a chance. Do not strangle them. Do not hold on to it and say yes. Let them practice the Hinayana, or other religious teachings, and say that they are good. Please let them go. Do not let them waste their energy, time and money in this life. They are so sincere in asking for the Dharma. Please give them a way out. Giving them a way out means for you to teach them some balanced Dharma. Secondly, please teach them how to enhance their awareness. Give them a way out, and let them know how to save themselves. You need to know whether the practice method taught by this religion or sect can help you enhance your awareness. Does it have the ability to help you enhance your awareness? This is a key point. If it does not, then you should not continue to follow them. Even if you think it is a good deed, donating money to them is a good deed, a merit. Isn't that good? But if you cannot improve your own awareness, they take your money and continue to preach the Dharma that cannot help those who really need it, and just give them some food to eat. This does not mean they are helping people. On the contrary, it may make them more ignorant and continue to fool people. You give them money to fool people, you will create karma for yourself. Do you understand? Maybe they are not trying to fool others on purpose. They really think that as long as people believe in them and just chant the Buddha's holy names, they can successfully save themselves. They also believe in this idea, so they keep asking you to follow them. However, you must know that without balance and the enhanced awareness, it will not work. You must know yourself what you need. Thirdly, you must remember that burying the awareness is the ability to judge whether the religion or sect is harming you. They themselves do not know that this will harm themselves and others, but they continue to harm others and blindly publicize it. Do not help them harm others. In short, if this religion buries the awareness, you should not help them. What does it mean to bury the awareness? If the method taught by this religion or sect is burying the awareness, it only promotes superstition without any reason or element of enhancing the awareness. They would say, as long as you persist in chanting Namo Amitabha, you are guaranteed to succeed, and you can even become a Buddha. How can these people, who have not enhanced their awareness, succeed just by chanting the Buddha's holy names? There is no afflictions being body, no cultivation of the mind and Dharma practice, teachings, no Diamond Sutra's oral pith instructions, nothing at all. Even the Diamond Sutra is put aside. And then they say that they have the supreme supernatural power. What on earth are they talking about? This will only harm sentient beings and make them miserable. If their awareness is buried, they will think that they do not need to learn anything, including the Diamond Sutra. They do not need anything and only need to chant the Buddha's holy names. Chanting the Buddha's holy names is not wrong. It is just that it has a certain degree of effectiveness, but it will not achieve the best effect. It can help you a little, but there is still a lot that it cannot help you with. It cannot help you to enhance your awareness. So, remember, if these elements are missing, it means that the teachings of this sect are problematic. In fact, there were many teachings in the past, many of which were very harmonious and balanced. Since the rise of the Pure Land School, many teachings have been eliminated, and people are only taught to chant the Buddha's holy names diligently. All other teachings of the exoteric Buddhism were defeated by them, and all other teachings disappeared. Only the esoteric Buddhism is something they cannot defeat, otherwise there will be no esoteric Buddhist teachings, either. This is really tragic. After all the teachings were defeated, they are the only one left. They teach people to just chant the Buddha's holy names and do nothing else. This is doomed. There is no awareness at all. If they do this, Buddhism will be destroyed. Remember, such teachings to bury the awareness and teach people to be superstitious about something instead of enhancing the awareness are in fact a kind of mental bondage. They are harming and controlling sentient beings. Remember, I admit that chanting the Buddha's holy names is good. It is also a kind of merit. One of the merits, not all of them. That is, it still requires a lot of assistance in order to practice the Dharma successfully. Do you understand? I am not belittling the effectiveness of chanting the Buddha's holy names, but it does not mean everything, nor does it concern the awareness. This is the answer. Do you understand? So, I have never belittled the Pure Land School. I do not mean that. Please do not misunderstand me. In fact, I also know that as a Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni had 5,000 disciples who also dared to stand up and ignore him. It means that what I say today, of course, will be attacked by people. However, I see that sentient beings are very pitiful. They have spent a lot of energy, time, and money, just to ask you to save them. Please do not bury their awareness. Give them a way out. I just want you to do this. I also know that saying this will offend many people, but there is nothing I can do. There is nothing I can do but to offend people in order to save them. So, you must remember these two things: physiological needs and safety needs. What is the method of the Hinayana? I have already talked about its perceptions, its methods of practice, its conduct, and its results. However, the Mahayana and Vajrayana have not been discussed yet. I will cover that another day. In short, you must remember that there are 84,000 methods of practicing Buddhism, but not all of them can achieve the goal of escaping from the cycle of reincarnation, or becoming a Buddha. This is very clear. Do not tell me that all different paths lead to the same destination. Your method is different, your mindset is different, and the details of your method are different. I want to tell you that even if they have the same name, the details of the teachings are different, all different. The results vary widely. We will continue to discuss this in the next session. Okay, that is all for today. Let's look at it again. The Sutra of the Garland of a Bodhisattva's Primary Karmas states that cultivating the 10 beliefs requires 1 to 3 kalpa before one can reach the initial level, that is, the Bodhisattva with initial resolute vows. How long is one kalpa? 43 billion and 20 million years. The Sutra for Humane Kings states that it would take 10,000 kalpa. It would require 10,000 kalpa. If you want to practice the Dharma following the correct path, but you are undecided about your progress and retreat, like feathers blown by the wind, not sure about east or west, then you will have to practice for 10,000 kalpa. The method I am teaching you now can enable you to attain Buddhahood in this very life. Now I have explained the Hinayana, but I have only talked part of it. There is still a lot that I have not covered. But you will have discovered, no wonder they cannot achieve it even if they practice for 10,000 kalpa, they can never attain Buddhahood. You finally understand why. If I do not explain it to you, you would not understand. Suppose you practice the exoteric Buddhism and cultivate the 10 beliefs, that is great, right? But if you do not connect them with the awareness, then you will have to cultivate for 10,000 kalpa. Treatise on the Awakening of Faith states that one will need 10,000 kalpa to cultivate the 10 beliefs before he can achieve success. If you want to become a Buddha in this lifetime, you must use the fastest method when cultivating the 10 beliefs, which is to use the mind cultivating procedure, develop the 5 wisdoms, and follow the oral pith instructions of the Diamond Sutra. There are 5 steps in the mind cultivating procedure. Do not underestimate these 5 steps and think they are very simple. Each step is just 2 words. There is a lot of knowledge in it, do you know? Some of the Hinayana teachings are also included. In this way, we can develop the 5 wisdoms and combine them with the oral pith instructions of the Diamond Sutra. Depending on the extent to which you apply them, how much you can apply will determine how fast you are. What is the goal of the mind cultivating procedure? Integrate the 10 beliefs into the awareness, and train the development of the 5 wisdoms. The 10 beliefs are 10 kinds of awareness. Enhance your awareness to the point of not abiding in any notion, and cultivate the 10 beliefs in this way. With not abiding anywhere to arouse the mind, work with the 10 beliefs to thoroughly overcome all difficulties and shortcomings in our mind and daily life. To complete the perfect enlightenment by not abiding anywhere to arouse the mind. Not abiding in any notion does not mean accepting, but doing nothing. Instead, it must be done in accordance with the 10 beliefs without attachment. One should not abide anywhere to arouse the mind. To accept it positively is to face it positively. With the agile awareness, combined with the 10 beliefs, one can develop the wisdom and reflect on all actions. That is, if we'd accept, we can develop the wisdom of equality. Questioning, analyzing, and finding the root help us develop the discriminating wisdom. Treating develops the mirror-like wisdom. After developing these 3 kinds of wisdom, and if we can successfully solve problems and correct shortcomings and the mind without abiding in any notion, we will have cultivated the mirror-like wisdom. If we then lead it into emptiness, neither existence nor voidness, the state of oneness, without abiding in any notion, we can develop the Dharmadhatu wisdom. If we cultivate all of these together with compassion and bodhicitta, we can obtain 100% bodhicitta, which is the development of the perfect enlightenment. That is, we can become a Buddha. Congratulations! The methods are being taught. They are being taught all the time, and they are being taught in detail all the time. You just need to keep absorbing and practicing. It is not okay to listen, but not practice. Do you understand? It will be a waste of effort. Remember to re-watch our Compassion and Bodhicitta series, episodes 20 to 41, explaining the mind cultivating procedure.